Aloha and welcome everyone to an amazing presentation of truth in movies. I am so surprised. I just watched the new Transformers 7, which is Rise of the Beast. That's the movie we're breaking down today. Transformers 7, Rise of the Beast. Holy cow, this movie is so packed full of esoteric symbolism. It's insane. I had the best time breaking this movie down, and we're going to go through and check out a lot of Easter eggs and esoteric breadcrumbs and stuff. Have you ever watched a movie that just kind of left you quiet after you watched it? You got so much, like, it was so profound. I wasn't expecting that from this. I mean, this is a Transformer. This is a movie about, toys. But wow, I can't wait to share this with you. Let's jump right into it. Welcome everybody in the live chat. I'm JayDreamerZ. Welcome to my channel if you're brand new. And if you are and you do like this presentation, I've got almost 100 other movies that we've broken down so far. I'm going to go through later tonight and I'm going to put numbers on each one of these. I think we're close to 100. I don't know if we might be, but let's start things off. Transformers Part 7. It's called Rise of the Beast. And as usual, it's brought to you by Mount Meru. Mount Meru, that holy mountain at the middle of the world, also called Rupus Nigra, that used to be shown on ancient maps. The Hollow Mountain, the plasma volcano, the source of the blue beam that shoots out, as we talk about in my Plasma Apocalypse series. It's going to be a huge part of this and an integral part of this presentation. Now, we begin the movie with one of the main characters saying, "There's a legend that precedes the dawn of our civilization." Now, time out. They're talking to us, remember? So they're starting off by saying, this is not just for your entertainment. This is not just to be amused by. This is something to consider. These ancient myths and legends that we talk about here on my channel all of the time, and the truth that can be found within all of them that has permeated our past all the way up into our present through things like pop culture, myths and legends, religions, stories, books, all of these things. So now we're talking about a legend that precedes the dawn of our civilization, or the beginning of our written history, really. A vile god, so large, so powerful, that it consumed entire planets as fuel. Now we're talking about the World Eater. We're going to get more into the World Eater symbolism in a little while. But many of you in the chat, if you want to, throw out some examples of different World Eaters that you can think of in different movies or TV shows or whatnot. I like to get as many together as we can and put our heads together. Until the day we saw Unicron with our own eyes. Now this is Unicron, the World Eater. You're going to see a lot of Plasma Apocalypse symbolism throughout this. This is basically the creation story, all right? There's two main ones because there's two different types of apocalypses, right? One by water, one by fire. You're going to see one of those main apocalyptic stories, which is also a Genesis story. The beginning and the end, the Alpha and Omega, are both one and the same. So as you can see, we've got the all-seeing eye symbolism of this eyeball that's coming closer and closer towards the world. And it says, he wanted... Now, this character, by the way, his name is Unicron. We're going to get into what that means and stuff here in just a bit. He wanted our greatest technology, the transwarp key. I'm trying to sound like a transformer. The transwarp key. Now, check this out. I've seen a lot of key symbolism in the movies where the main characters have to try to find a key or a collection of keys or different keys in order to solve the riddle or in order to complete the movie or the quest or whatnot, right? So I wanted to look up the word key and see exactly what the etymology is. What's the origin of the word key? If we look it up, it says perhaps it's related to the Middle Low German K, which means lance or spear. Boom, a pike, a lance, a spear, a column, a shaft, a rod, a beam, a beanstalk, etc., right? Okay, so a lance or a spear on the notion of a tool to cleave with, so something that also splits. From the Proto-Germanic ki, which means to cleave or to split. Also from kiel, which means a wedge. Or from the Gothic, which means to come forth. and it's said of seed sprouts, which means to germinate. So we also have implications. So the original words gave off implications as well, right? And dependent upon what other words you put next to them, you would better understand what it was implying, right? So sometimes that beam or that lance or that spear that shot up out of the earth was also seen to cleave the sky or to split the sky open or to castrate some sort of a sky entity or a sky god. And at the same time, those beams that came up terrestrially, those terrestrial beams or earth beams that shot up, they also filled the world and germinated it, bringing new life or restoring the Garden of Eden. Now, if we look up the word ki, it's also directly related to the word chi. Just like, you use your chis, your aura, your chakra, your power that's inside of your soul and stuff. But this is actually ki, which is the 22nd letter of the Greek alphabet, representing a k sound. The letter is shaped like an X. So this Greek letter, ki, is shaped like an X. I believe that's how you say it. I can't remember. But it's shaped like an X, which is really interesting. We're going to get to that X letter in here in just a bit. Now it says, how to unlock your chi. This is just an example of what chi is. You see this oftentimes in anime and stuff, like they use their chi, their bodily power, their spirit force or whatever to shoot out fireballs or, to meditate and to water bend or stuff like that if you're an Avatar fan. Now let's look up the etymology of ki. Now this word right here, chi, is also pronounced differently. It's actually originally a guttural sound. It's a k. It's a k sound way down here at the bottom of the throat. So it's he, almost like saying he, but a real hard sound, right? And this can evolve over time as it has into different languages and different words. So if you look this up in Hebrew, it's the root of the word life, which is said in the plural form for some reason, chayim or he. That I am at the end it used to basically mean it's plural, right? So much or an abundance of life. So for example, whenever Hebrew people make a toast, instead of saying cheers, they say lachaim or lachaim, which means to life, right? Now, chi or chai is also where we get our word hi. So whenever you say hi to somebody, you're actually going back to the old ways. The old way was to wish your friends or your family or a stranger you are welcoming, you would wish them strength of life specifically. You would say strength unto you, right? Which over time became short form and short form. People kind of got lazy over time and said things shorter and shorter. So then they just said hi, which means life, right? Or strength unto you or strong life to you. So when you say hi, that's what that means. It means life to you. You're wishing someone, you're blessing someone upon meeting them, basically. Now, also, the etymology is related to Enki, or one of the two of the Anunnaki brother gods, Enki and Enlil, right? Enki was the one that you see quite often depicted as like water flowing from his sides. And it says the exact meaning of Enki's name is uncertain. The common translation is Lord of the Earth. The Sumerian En is translated as a title equivalent to Lord, and it was originally a title given to the high priest. Ki means earth. So they're solid on that ki or chi or chai all mean earth, or they imply earth. They really mean energy, right? But where does that energy come from? The earth. Right? The earth is charging up that energy right now, which is why we have such a lack of magic and true energy in our world, because it's all receding down into the bowels of the earth, ready to reverse and share with us up here on the surface world as our surface world becomes charged up once more, and we enter back into the realm, into the times of magic and mysticism and power and energy and strong chakras and strong spirits and lifespans that are extended and so on and so forth, right? Now, they say that in is translated, they're guessing basically, and it sometimes was translated as Lord, but I believe that was an extension of what it really meant, which was sky or the heavens, right? So on or anu or onu, and there's different ways to say that, was usually the sky god, an, and different ways to say that too. So Anki means, could be translated energy in the sky, or the ethereal energy, right? Which is really interesting. Here's an image just to give you, something to consider what Enki, this is like a cartoonification, but you can see that here it shows like these little currents flowing off of him, and typically it's portrayed as water, so they'll put fish in there to tell you that it's like water coming up off of Enki. Which is the blue beam that shoots up and then sprouts out. We're gonna show you a lot more of the blue beam symbolism here in just a bit, but that's why it shows you this being blue as well as the water stuff. The fountain of youth also is what it represents as well. And you'll notice that there's sort of that Hurley symbol too, like the up and down, but this one's like this, up and down instead of sideways. Now, Ki also has an equivalent in Egyptian, which is Ka. Because you have to remember, when you go really far back in time to picture forms, there really were no vowels, okay? And when I say vowels, I mean more like vowel points, or those letters that were placed into words that really didn't have a belonging originally in order to force an accent or in order to force a dialect. And that served the purpose of retaining the language so that people didn't evolve their language over time by developing various strands and strains of different accents that would turn into different languages. So Ka is another way that you can say Ki or He or Chi, etc., right? Or Chai. So Ka is another one, and it means power, energy, spirit life, and it's represented by this glyph, which is the two arms of Atlas holding up the sky, or the top portion of that blue beam that shoots up and creates sort of this Y up in the sky, or this hook, or this nail, or this tent peg that is seen as being fastened into the earth, at the center of the earth, at the axis of the world, or the axis mundi, right? Ka is representative of plasma, right? Or energy, or spirit life, or spirit energy. Plasma is oftentimes represented physically or cartoonified as serpents or snakes specifically, right? Serpents are a little different the further back in time you go. They weren't always equated with snakes, the animals that we have. But for example, you have Ka in the Jungle Book, and that's why his name is called that, and he's the snake. He represents the plasma that spirals down from the sky during the apocalypse. Now, here's a different letter, okay? You might think this is the letter P at the top, but it's not. It's the Greek letter Rho, which is really interesting. You can see it sort of evolved down into our modern letter R in the English alphabet or in Latin, right? If you add the Rho, or the Rho, you could say, to the Ki or the Chi, right, you get something different. Now let's figure out, we know what Chi means, we know what Ki means, but let's figure out what Rho means real quick so we can figure out a brand new word. Rho comes from Resh in the ancient Phoenician, or the Paleo-Hebrew, you could say, and it's a picture of someone's head. It's our letter R, so the letter R means, the picture of it originally meant the head, and by extension the top, right? The head of a person, something that is the highest, the chief, something that is the most important. These are all different implications of the picture form head, right? So He and then Ro, right? Or Resh, Hiresh, right? This is another picture form of how it evolved over time with the picture of the head, but then people, got quicker and lazier basically, and it just became sort of a top of the head. All right, so if you put it together, what does it spell? Hero. Interesting, right? The power of the head, the power at the top, the most important power, or those who have the most important power, right? Our heroes of old, the heroes of old. When you put those two glyphs together, this is exactly what you're talking about. You're talking about somebody who has power in somebody who has the top power, somebody who has the most important power, or somebody who just has a lot of power in their head or their brain or their pineal gland, you could say, is activated, right? Now, this is the ancient glyph. This is one of them. When you put them together, it would be an X, which is the He, you would say, and then the Rho looks like a P, right? This is interesting. This was used by the old pagan emperor Constantine. He ended up converting and turning into a Christian, according to the stories, because he looked up in the sky one day, him and his army. There's two different actual historic accounts of this. He looked up into the sky when he was going to war, him and his entire battalion saw signs and wonders, shapes in the sky. They looked up, and the legends say this is what they saw. Now, this A and W off to the side, that just sort of means first and last, okay? When you see first and last or alpha and omega, it symbolizes that point in time, where time is at the end and time is at the beginning. For me, it is the apocalypse itself, right? Which is when, for example, in obviously Jesus is referred to as the first and the last, etc. This is when Jesus, when you see this, Alpha and Omega, makes his appearance. This is when the Savior comes or the Savior dies or is sacrificed, as we'll see. So here's actually the accounts. It says here that Lactantius, a tutor of Constantine's son, said that before the emperor left Gaul for Rome, he and his army saw a great cross in the sky. Beneath the cross were written the Greek words "in tutoi Nike," which means "in this sign conquer." Bishop Eusebius of Caesarea, a Roman historian, tells a similar account, but differs in that they experienced this vision just before the battle outside of Rome, basically. So Hero is also directly related to this particular Egyptian place called Cairo. You see how it's just a slightly different pronunciation in the throat, and all of a sudden it turns into a different word over time that has completely lost its meaning. If you try to look up the word, they would just say, oh, this is a city in Egypt. That's it, you know? But you try to argue with the computer and say, well, what does it mean, you know? This is what it means. And also the XP is directly related to having life in video games. Okay. Whenever you play video games, like for example, Fortnite, oftentimes though you can gain XP. Now they say it's short for experience points, but wouldn't that be EP? Right? It's not. It's written out XP, and I believe this might be why. I don't know if it's done purposefully or not, but at least on a collective subconscious level worldwide, we're trained over time to know that X and P together equals being strong, basically, right? The hero. So here is your key, right? This is what we're looking for. We're looking for something that is an object of power at the top, okay? Or the head, right? The foremost of the world. Now, you could minimize this and make it about yourself and internalize it, which is great. But we can also maximize it and look at the larger version and apply it to our world. At the top of the world, there is a source of power, which is a key in the form of the plasma volcano, as I call it. Mount Meru. And it says, back to the movie, it says, he sent his most powerful henchmen to collect it. So, this sky god that is a world eater is coming towards this world right here that they're showing you, and he's sending his henchmen in order to collect this key, okay, at the top of the world. All right, here we go. Now, the henchman's name is Scourge. Scourge. Now, Scourge is interesting. This is a Scourge, and this guy's name is Scourge. So why did they choose the name Scourge for this guy to go and collect the key? Because when that world eater comes down, plasma is released into our world from the plasma sphere that's right above us, right outside of our world, spiraling around, right? When the electromagnetic force field around our world goes down, that strong magnetic push goes away, and that plasma is free to come in and ground itself or dock, you know, as you know, depending on how you want to say it. And this is what that plasma looks like. It breaks off. It's the sky dragon or the sky worms that you can cut one head off and two will grow in its place because it is a scourge. This is an ancient Roman weapon, or it's a torture device, really. You know, it's kind of like a whip or whatever. Sometimes it's called the cat of nine tails. You see, they put little knots on it in order to, like, they would whip people, and those knots would help and to, you know, increase the pain that people felt, basically. Sometimes it would actually tie little pieces of glass or sharp objects to make it even worse, depending on, you know, how mean they wanted to be to people. But this, according to the legends, is what they did to Jesus when he was up on the cross. The scourge came down onto Jesus and was seen as whipping his back, right? Interesting symbolism. Now, speaking of interesting symbolism, we have a picture of the key. Now, does this picture of the key look similar to anybody? Have you seen this form before? I have, quite a few times. This is the shape of the ultimate weapon in many ancient religions and historical texts, but especially in Hinduism. Okay, especially in Hinduism, they have a weapon called the Vajra. The Vajra is depicted across time and across cultures. It's not limited to Hinduism, as you can see here. Basically, it comes together into a little knot or into a little point, right? And then it branches out on both sides, upwards and downwards. It was also seen as being the thunderbolt or the lightning bolt of Zeus. This is actual history. This can be seen in many a museum across the world, showing Zeus holding on to a fictional key that is in the movies, basically, right? That's because this is real. Totally real. You can look it up. It's all over the place. It makes many different appearances across history. This is one of the Vajra or the Thunderbolt, however you want to call it, being held. And look what's down there, the Phoenix, also directly related. As we'll show you the Phoenix symbolism here in just a bit. Here's Zeus holding his Thunderbolt. Now this Thunderbolt is used to defeat the Scourge, or the Hydra, or the snake entity, or the dragons, or whatever you want to call it. Sometimes it's seen as a sword, sometimes it's different things, right? But this is the weapon that is used to defeat that red menace that comes down from above in the shape of plasma, because this is also plasma itself. Now, sometimes it's depicted in different ways, okay? Initially, it will just be a straight up beam, or just a column, but as it starts to move through the fluid of our atmosphere, it starts to branch out and form, different like currents and stuff like that flow off of it, because it's also a fluid working inside of a fluid. So Indra is the one that held the Vajra, or the Thunderbolt. It says that the Vajra is the Thunderbolt and is the mighty weapon in the possession of Indra, the god of rain, storms, and lightning. Basically, he's the Hindu version of Thor, you could say. And Thor's hammer would be another version of the Vajra, or the Thunderbolt, etc. Right? Now, here's a real-life version of what people may have seen. Keep in mind, these are just small examples from the modern day. Amplify this in a time whenever our atmosphere is energetically amplified from all of that plasma coming in from above and shooting up from below. Excuse me. And we get these types of forms here. These are called sprites. You can see these up in the sky. These were almost impossible to catch a few years back, but now people are starting to take more and more pictures of them as they are lasting longer and longer. And you can notice that they go down, and then there's a Z-pinch right there in the middle. That's the technical name for that in plasma physics. And then at that Z-pinch, they reverse, and the energy goes upwards. So there's energy that goes up and then energy that goes down, up there in our sky, in our atmosphere, in the form of a thunderbolt, in the form of lightning, in the form of electricity. So that's just one example. And they also kind of look like light beings too. I mean, if you just saw these things and they didn't go away, you might think this is some kind of alien light creature, you know what I mean? Which it kind of is, right? All right. Now, here's another example. This is a really good one too. I like this one. You can really see the Z-pinch in there clearly. Hey, Boogle, thanks for your donation. I appreciate you. All right. So here's some other examples. So if you look, there's various examples of, this says a stylized illustration of 3D electric discharge formations in the plasma laboratory. So this has been recreated in the modern world in places where they're studying plasma physics, and they're studying how plasma reacts, how it moves, what shapes it takes under different conditions. And these are just some of the ways that it sprouts off and branches out. It creates this trident and other forms as well, right? But this up here is what people may have seen from very far away in the sky on a cosmic scale, right? And these are the Vajras up here. Here's some more examples of it. Up here we see the ancient Greek forms of the bipolar thunderbolt. These are the actual forms, right? Sometimes, like I said, it just looks like a beam, but over time it starts to sprout out just like those sprites do, right? And then, of course, we have like another version of it, which would be Jacob's Ladder or Jack's Beanstalk, etc. Over here, we have the Squatterman glyph. These are all the same thing. It's just that they're shapeshifters, because plasma is a shapeshifter. Now, back in the movie, we meet the Maximals. Maximals are transformers from the old world, basically. Instead of transforming, because they didn't have cars in the old world, they transformed into animals. They came down, they saw the animals, they copied their shapes. They're shape shifters, okay? Now we're talking about a battle between bad energy or bad vibes and good energy or good vibes, right? So some of that good vibe energy took the shape of what we call the animals, and some of it took the shape of other things, even animals as well. But this is really interesting because this is the creation story of the animals being introduced into our world. Where did the animals come from, right? Was it just, according to mainstream academics, we all came from like, the same soup, or, every animal, every fish, every human, every tree, everything just came from the same little rock or dot, or I don't know what they try to say. It doesn't make sense to me personally, right? But if you listen to the creation myths and the legends of our ancestors, it says here, this is a Cherokee myth. This says, in the long time ago, when everything was all water, all the animals lived up above in Galun Lati, beyond the stone arch that made the sky. And then it goes on to say, when the earth was dry and the animals came down. So I'm not going to read the whole story, but according to this story, and this is just the Cherokee, there are many like this that you can research and find where it talks about animals coming down from the sky. As a matter of fact, remember how we talked about Unicron? And what that might mean, right? Or be a reference to. This is from the Bible. This is from the book of Isaiah, chapter 34 in the King James Version, right? The translation reads this. It says, it's talking about judgment on the nations, which is talking about judgment day, which is the apocalypse. And this is God speaking, or the God of the Hebrews at least. And he says, come near, O nations, to listen. Pay attention. So this is just like when we watch the movies and they tell you from the start, like, hey, this is a true story, or hey, pay attention. Pay attention, O peoples, let the earth hear, and all that fills it, the world and all that springs from it. And then it goes on to say, all the stars of heaven will be dissolved. The skies will be rolled up like a scroll, and all of their stars will fall. And it goes on to say, and the unicorns shall come down with them. All of the stars, angelic beings, as they're also symbolized as being, will come down, and it talks about the unicorns coming down with these fallen stars, as well as the bullocks and the bulls, or cows and bulls and animals that are, bovine types, basically, right? Or quadrupeds and stuff like that, right? So we have a reference to that also, not just in the Cherokee word of mouth stories, but in the actual written account that is read and revered by millions of people across the world, right? Now we get back to the movie and he says, listen, if Unicron or unicorn, right? The horned god Chronos, we'll talk more about him in just a bit. If Unicron were to get the key, right? So they're trying to protect this key. And notice in the background, there's this interesting looking steep mountain that's sort of got some blue veins in it. We're going to check that out in a bit, but I want to acknowledge Unicron. So Unicron or unicorn, uni means one, corn means horn, basically. It's the same as the word crown. Something that is a crown on someone's head is actually horns. See that H sound? That was a hard H, just like Chaim, or just like Hai, how we talked about earlier. It was almost a K, almost a G sometimes, right? So horn is actually korn, or depending on how you say those letters, koron, or korona, or crown. See, it's a crown, which is horns that come up, which is on the top of this stick figure. So you have this crown, or this circular corona up there in the sky, and all this plasma that comes out of it looking like thorns. You see where I'm going with that, right? But eventually that plasma will come out in mass, and it can be attracted to each other, and it pours out of that hole looking like a tongue. You ever wonder why some of those like the goddess Kali or Medusa are portrayed as sticking their tongue out? It's not because that was, fun for them to draw it like that, like, haha. And, that's what it turned into. That's where we get that from, right? Saying that there's some sort of a rebellious thing happening when you stick your tongue out and you put horns on your head and stuff like that, right? That's where that comes from, is this tongue that comes out of this hole in the sky, which is plasma. Some people will interpret it as being a tongue. right? And sometimes it might point in different directions dependent upon the winds up there in the upper atmosphere and our locations individually here on Earth. So some people will see a tongue coming out of a giant sky god's mouth. Other people will see a horn sticking out of the top of a head, or a beard, the long bearded god symbolism, right? Now, also, this is related to Chronos or Chronos, which is horned, assuming a Semitic derivation of QRN. Now that word QRN right there, we broke that down when we did the video about Moses having horns, right? Whether or not Moses had horns or if he had beams of light coming out of his face, etc. So check that one out if you want to learn some more about this particular word right here. But it's directly related to crown, corona, Karen, if your name is Karen, etc. And it says Chronos or Chronos was never represented horned in Hellenic art, which is really interesting. I'm going to show you some pictures of Chronos here in just a bit. But let's get back to this mountain. This, figuratively and symbolically, is Mount Meru. This is Mount Meru at the center of the world, where there is the mountain on the maps that's called Rupus Nigra, the magnetic mountain, right? And it shoots up this energy from inside of the earth, which is ionized oxygen, these gases that are being released in mass because the pressure has been released, right? So all that pressure inside the world, the inner world underneath us is also pressurized. So when that pressure is released, all those gases come up out of the earth itself. They become ionized through the electricity, the electrical forces and stuff, and it turns blue. So as you can see, they oftentimes make this like a blue beam. The movies will depict it in different ways. Sometimes it's green, to represent the North Pole. Sometimes it's yellow to represent the Golden Age, etc. But this represents Mount Meru itself, and that beam shooting up and branching out at the top. Right? And this is the mountain of the gods. This represents Sinai, Olympus, etc., where the gods take off, just as you see here, and also inversely where they will land, as you will see at the end of the movie. All right, so here we have they put the key into the spaceship, and they jumped into Mount Meru, took the little plasma elevator up to the top of the sky, and a portal opened up. This is a black hole. Okay, this is what they really are, is actual holes that open up in physical objects above us, which is our sky. The Cherokee said that it was made out of stone. There's different legends about what the sky or the firmament was actually made of, but all of them agree. In the ancient world, it was physical. There was a physical barrier, and I believe there still is a physical barrier because I'm going back to the old ways. But anyways, a hole opens up in the sky. That's usually when the world turns black. This is a black hole. It will be the black hole sun, as you'll see at the end of the movie. So what happens when they go through this hole and they leave the earth? They enter into what I call plasma conduits, right? Outside of our world, there is what academics calls the plasma sphere, which is plasma that is spiraling around according to these different Lorentz forces that act upon the plasma as it's spiraling and sort of fluctuating around the top of our world or the top of that dome firmament, right? If a hole opens up, you enter into that plasma conduit or that Einstein-Rosen bridge or those wormholes or however you want to call them, right? Wormhole will definitely be on the other side of a black hole because that's, boom, black hole, wormhole, right? So you travel through that, and these hallways will take you to different places in the fractalverse that connect to the top of other domed worlds or other realms or whatnot, right? Other alternate Earths is what I like to call them. Now, Scourge goes before his master, Unicron. As you can see, he's like a huge, gigantic, titanic god type being or whatever. And Unicron starts to eat this planet. Now, they took off before he could eat it, so the key is safe. But he's still going to eat this planet because he's a world eater. He digs his big old claws into it, and all of the rocks and everything gets sucked up. Basically, Unicron, who is... Let me give you a little backstory to the Transformers, because I don't know how much Transformers lore you guys know in the chat, but the creator god, there was basically two of them in the Transformers universe, right? Let's see, they got Primus. Okay, Primus is the good one. He's the one that like gives life to everything. And then you have I'm trying to remember all their names, right? Primus was the creator one, and then Unicron was the world eater. He was the destroyer that would come and destroy everything that Primus created, right? So they're always twins. They're always in opposition to each other. Basically, it's the positive and negative electrical forces that flow through everything, right? Now, this is the world eater. When he comes, this hole opens up in the sky, which is this eyeball symbolism, and all of the stuff gets sucked up into it because the world is depressurizing, or our atmosphere, or whatever realm it is, the atmosphere depressurizes, right? And if the atmosphere is depressurizing, right, whatever the weight of that atmosphere is being sucked up will be replaced by an equally buoyant force that that basically helps to push things up. So it's not just being sucked up, it's being pushed up through buoyancy itself. The buoyancy in our world, or in our atmosphere, which is fluid, right, increases so much that everything just starts to float. We have zero gravity, if you like to call it that, for a short period of time during this apocalyptic scenario when the world depressurizes. And if you're directly at the North Pole looking up, this is what it will look like. This is what you would see, basically. It's always going to be a red eye, or a red spectrum eyeball. That's the evil eye. That's the eye of God. That's why so many God characters and evil people in the movies and stuff have one eye. They're all one-eyed, basically. And all this stuff gets sucked up because Chronos is eating his children. Okay, this creator god will suck everything up into its giant mouth or whatever, and everything will get sucked up, and then whatever doesn't make it will sort of be seen as being spat back out, which is as the story goes. Now, that's before we even get to the movie title. Now, let's jump into the movie. We go to modern day Manhattan, the big city, New York, and there's some weird alien writing down here, and you'll also notice this is in 1994, but it's a modern movie. They have added these two buildings right here, right? And this alien language seems to have some numbers in it. I'm just going to point that out real quick. I'm going to get to that alien language in a bit because we're actually going to translate that. But we start things off in New York, all right, in 1994. We're going back to my time, my day. This was my jam, was 1994. Now we go into the room of the main character, Noah, and he's just, you know, portrayed as having like a regular room or whatever. Now, there's a Wu-Tang Clan poster in the background. You see that? Let's zoom in on that real quick. Bow, bow, bow. Wu-Tang. You see that? It's a rap group, all right? From the 90s, basically. So, Wu-Tang Clan, and they're also playing one of Wu-Tang's songs, which is Cream, or Cash Rules Everything Around Me. And cream is really interesting because that's the color for space, okay? So when you see a lot of cream symbolism, oftentimes it's referencing space, okay? I'm just going to leave that real short. But anyways, it's because space is not black, okay? Darkness is black, all right? Space is out there is full of lights and plasma and stuff. But it's dark from our perspective because we're looking up at the ceiling, basically. Now, let's check out the Wu-Tang Clan. They purposefully put their songs in here. They put a poster in here. And it's not just because they're trying to promote the Wu-Tang Clan. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know how many people still listen to Wu-Tang Clan, but anyways, let's check out why they call themselves that. The Wu-Tang Clan received their title through the martial arts film Shaolin and Wu-Tang, which portrayed multiple disciples of the temple to be disciplined in the Wu-Tang form, which is a type of kung fu. The origin of the word Wu-Tang derives from Wudang, the Taoist holy mountain located in the central area of China. Wudang, which is another pronunciation, right, of Wu-Tang, same exact word. Now, if we look up the lore, the history, the actual real history of this holy mountain in China called Wudang, which is where the Wu-Tang Clan get their name from, it says that there was a story. The protector of Wudang Mountain is the Dark Warrior. Later on, his name would be the Perfect Warrior. The Dark Warrior is a turtle that is intertwined with a snake. So this turtle symbolism, okay, represents a dome or an energetic dome, basically. There's two main ones. There's the dome that covers us, which is our sky. And then at the center of our world, when that energy comes up out of Mount Meru, it creates a secondary, smaller dome that protects the Garden of Eden or Hyperborea or however you want to see it. It's that island at the middle of the world at the North Pole. Another energetic dome is created right there. It's just a smaller one. So the protector of the Wudang Mountain is the Dark Warrior. The Dark Warrior is a turtle or a dome intertwined with a snake or the plasma symbolism, right? It is one of the Cixin, 4 Chinese astrological figures that symbolizes the cardinal directions and elements. So we know exactly which dome they're talking about, not the larger one, right? The larger one basically is south, okay? But, and I'll have to explain that another time if you don't know that. But that mini dome at the middle, those are the four corners of the world. That's the westernmost extremes. That's the place where the magnetic mountain lies and where the cardinal directions are created, where you go from there, right? All right, let's read on about this. This is interesting. It says that one day he was very upset and he jumped off of a cliff because he pushed this girl and he didn't realize she was going to fall off this cliff. He was meditating and she was distracting him. So he pushes her. She starts to fall off the cliff and he jumps after her. As he fell, 5 dragons appeared and lifted him up into the heavens. He started to float up into the sky. As a totemic or a totem representation of the north and the element water, like Enki, the Dark Warrior is a part of 5 elements in cosmology. The fifth element, plasma. This is all a story. It's all cartoonified story form of the plasma at Mount Meru shooting straight up from the earth. And it's basically said that people are able to ride that plasma beam. I think it's cold plasma. Cold plasma, you could be inside of it. You could touch it. It can envelop you and you won't burn or get electrocuted or anything like that. Now, here's an example. It's just a drawing of that particular warrior, the perfect warrior, the dark warrior. And it shows you the turtle with the snake wrapped around it. Or if you zoom out, you can see there's this steep mountain in the background that's basically symbolic of Mount Meru or Rupus Nigra et Altissima. Now, back to the movie. In New York, is anybody from New York in the chat? I don't know. If you are, can you tell me what island this is, right? This is supposed to be, I think this is like a famous island. I don't know if you guys know which one this is, but they show it from the perspective of the Statue of Liberty. So here's Liberty Island, like where the Statue of Liberty is, and then you're looking at a different island sort of off in the distance. Can you guys, is there anybody in the chat that can guess which one? Mother Dragon. Hey, Mother Dragon was the first one I saw that says Ellis Island. Ellis Island, right on. Wrong. Like totally wrong. I was just setting you guys up. Sorry, Mother Dragon, but thanks for playing. So check this out. Let me tell you something. You're not entirely wrong. Okay, it's supposed to be Ellis Island, but if you're from Jersey or you're from New York and you look closely, you'll notice this is not Ellis Island. Right? And they show you it from this perspective. This is also not Ellis Island, right? I went to Google Earth just to show you guys. This is all fake. What you're looking at, totally not real. None of that is real, okay? That's a made-up place, and that's not even what Ellis Island looks like. It's similar, but it's not. You go to Google Earth, same exact perspective. You zoom in, and look at that building back there. Hold on. Wait a minute. What is this? You see that building with these little old world Tartarian structure right there with these domes and stuff like that? Now let's compare that to what's in the movie. Interesting. That's a totally different building. It doesn't have any domes or anything like that. As a matter of fact, if you look really closely, there's an entire section of that island that is missing. Look at it from the top, right? In the movie, it's cut off right behind the building. Let's go back and check it out. Right behind that building, boom, pretty much cut off. See that little water tower? Look right behind that. There's almost, really nothing there. But if you look in real life, there's a whole bunch of stuff there. There's a whole circle park right back here and stuff. So let's compare it real quick. Let's check it out. This is fictional. Okay. This is a spell. Okay. This is really interesting that they can cast these types of spells to trick us into thinking that it's real. Now the question is, why would they do that? There's actually a museum. That's supposed to be a museum, and we're going to show you the museum here in just a bit. Here's the real museum on Ellis Island. It is a museum of immigration, okay? In the movie, they have this fictitious museum, which is a museum like, natural history museum or something like that. But what would be the need to alter and put in an entirely different building instead of just using one that's already existent? You know what I mean? It's not like you couldn't just fake it and make it look like, it's a different building. Just like this is weird. It's the inverse. They added these buildings, which really were there at that time, right? In the background, you can see these particular 2 buildings right up here. So why would they add real buildings and then fake ones? Like they could have used the actual real building that's really there. There's a real museum, a real building that's actually there, right? Which looks pretty cool. But instead, they took that out, they cut off half the island, and they put in some whack-looking building instead of this awesome-looking building. I just wanted to point that out. I wonder what theories you might have about that. All right, so we meet this girl. This girl works at the museum. She is well versed in history and stuff, and she's an intern basically, and she's somebody that helps out and tells what the pieces are about and stuff. So she's late to work. She's running to catch up, and they ask her opinion on all these new artifacts that just came in. She says, "Oh, this Greek curse tablet, it would be expensive, but it's a fake." And she's like, "How do you know it's a fake?" She says, "You see that spelling? It's Roman, right? It doesn't even show up in that era." Now, this is interesting. First, let's go back to this real quick. A curse tablet actually did exist in ancient Roman times and ancient Greek times. What happened is people would often chisel into, it was usually metal. It was usually some small, thin sheet of metal or something. They would write a curse on it, or a blessing. Sometimes it was a spell. Oftentimes, it was a love spell, right? Sometimes it was just an emotional one. Sometimes it was a sexual one or whatever. But people, many people, they found thousands of these all over the place, okay? This was common. And the reason I want to point this out is for a couple of reasons. One is that it totally could be written in Roman, because that's the oldest Greek curse tablet that you'll find was like towards the very end of, like, I don't know, I want to say the 6th century. I feel like that's pretty close, okay? And then Rome was founded in like the early 7th century, right? It's like 100 years, basically, right between the two. So where did the Roman language come from, right? Well, she says, you see that spelling? It's Roman. Well, there's no Roman spelling. It's Latin, okay? So this is good for us to study these things so that we know. Anyways, you can have the Latin spelling, but using Greek letters, because there's a transitional period between Greek or Greece, or the Grecian period and the Roman period, right? Anyways, this is really interesting. My point is, they believed and practiced magic in ancient Greece and in early Roman times at the very least. I'm not guessing. I'm not speculating. I'm telling you, there is physical archaeological proof. This is one of them, right? Many hundreds of forms of these right here. Sometimes they would throw them into a lake or into a fountain. Sometimes they would, if it was a curse, they would, nail it to someone's property or whatever. This was one form of actual magic that people practiced. They believed in magic. And I'm not just saying this is, it's because of this one example. It's because of many, many, many different examples, especially in the form of accepted academic ancient historians that modern academics stands upon the shoulders of, right? It's just that they're salad bar eaters, so they pick and choose what they want to authenticate from these ancient historians, Greek historians, Roman historians, and what they don't, they're like, oh, well, that's just they're talking about magic in this part, so it's they believed in that at the time. They won't acknowledge it, right? Instead of taking all of it as being truth, they just kind of pick and choose like it's a salad bar. So anyways, this new object comes in. It's this weird, interesting looking falcon, right? And you notice it's all tarnished and stuff like that. Well, this is interesting. This reminds me of a movie that is really old, and it's called the Maltese Falcon. You may see references to this. It does permeate pop culture quite often. The Maltese Falcon basically is symbolic. Okay, the whole story, I'll just read this to you. It says in the film, the Falcon, made in 1539 as a gift from the Knights Templar of Malta. That's why it's called the Maltese Falcon. It was made as a gift from the Knights of Malta to Charles V. Is really made of gold and is encrusted with jewels, but has been covered in black enamel to disguise its value. So in the movie, you see just this black falcon, just like you see right here, this tarnished, dirty looking falcon. You wouldn't think that it actually contains something valuable, right? So that's called the Maltese Falcon, and that's symbolic. It's often symbolically used as something that on the outside you can't tell it's very valuable. Maybe has a lot of black on or whatever, but on the inside, right, when you crack it open, there's treasure or something like that, right? Now we take a look, and there's these interesting glyphs. Pay attention to these glyphs when they show you, when they make up a language in movies. They almost never just make it up. Like, it's not just gibberish. It's actual alphabets that they create for the movie, or actual alphabets that really exist somewhere in the world. This one's really interesting because basically I see the Roman numeral 7 right there, right? So that's kind of interesting. Or it could be this V is the Vav, which is a 6 in and of itself, and then 101. Now that V or Vav or 6 is the hook in the ancient picture form, which is that blue beam that is a tent peg for our world that holds up the canopy or the ceiling or the sky or the roof. So that, and then 101, one and the 1 or the 11, right? That is symbolic of these other two beams that shoot up from the anode and cathode plasma volcanoes. And then, of course, you have the 0 or the sky entrance or the earth entrance in between them. 101, the place where it all begins, right? Now, we're going to come back to this language. She writes it down on her hand, so I took a special note. In my mind, I'm like, I'm going to come back. I'm going to figure out what this means, because they're not just showing it to me here. They're showing it to me here. They're having the character in the movie write it down and put the camera that close to it. It's important to me, at least, to truth seekers like myself. Now we get back to the main character, Noah. His brother's kind of sick and stuff. And he's like, man, he's 11 years old. There's the 11 again, right? They show it to you here. They show it to you here. There's the 11. 11 is symbolic of Elven, or the Elu, or the rulers of the world, etc., right? The children will inherit the earth, which is sort of the symbolism there. So there's the 11. 11 is associated with magic and power. Just like in Stranger Things, there was the girl 11, right? There's many different references to people who are 11 years old in the movies. All right, now he's hanging out with his brother in the subway, or on the train, as they say, and he says, life ain't a comic book, man. He's all upset because life isn't going his way. But life is a comic book. Like everything, especially these days, the world is so absurd and upside down and crazy. There's almost no distinction between the world that we're living in and going into and weird movies. Like the movies have to get crazier and crazier in order to like outpace the modern world that we live in. So to me, life is very much a comic book. He says, no one's coming to save us. We're alone in this. So if this is wrong, right? Which, by the way, the movie shows you that he is wrong. Then this is also wrong, right? No one's coming to save us. There is something on the way. There will be salvation. The world is going to change. That negative energy that permeates our world, and I mean electrical forces that are negative and positive, there's a balance between the two. Our world is full of negative, bad vibes, bad energy. It's being pulled in by the world. It's negative energy, but pretty soon that will reverse with the polarity reversal, and it will fill up and go the other way, introducing positivity, or the golden age, basically. All right, so they take you to this fictional museum. This is all fake, okay? Looks super real, right? Now, this right here is symbolic. This museum, this whole place right here is symbolic. This obelisk in the middle is symbolic of Mount Meru, or the blue beam that shoots up out of Mount Meru. And this pool of beautiful crystal clear blue water represents the lake that surrounds the Rupus nigra, right? I'll show you a picture of it here in just a bit. Anyways, let's get back to this Maltese Falcon, right? On the outside, tarnished, dirty, black, but on the inside is revealed the treasure, at least according to the original movie, the Maltese Falcon, right? So when the treasure is revealed is whenever electricity is introduced in the form of this plasma beams that they're shooting at it in order to like analyze it. And you can see in the middle, it starts to break off, and there's a little light right there, a little speck of light right there in the middle. So it goes all the way around and it breaks. The whole thing breaks, revealing the key. The key is inside of this dark, tarnished Maltese Falcon, right? So on the outside, it looks dark and worthless and black and dusty and dirty, but on the inside, there's treasure, the Cave of Wonders, this is all Mount Meru symbolism, right? So Mount Meru is affectionately known, or I should say Rupus nigra, is literally in Latin, the Black Mountain, okay? It's a magnetic mountain at the middle of our world, and many believe that it is responsible for pulling our compasses in that direction. So let's check this out. Let's imagine that Rupus nigra, right, is also metallic in nature, which is why it is magnetic. If it was just a rock, it might not be so. But if it was a metallic mountain, then it could be magnetic, right? Now, if it was metallic, it could also rust. So check this out. How to remove rust using electrolysis. Electrolysis is a simple and effective way to remove rust and restore metal without damaging the surface as sanding or scraping would do, right? So basically, let me give you a mental picture, right? You have a beautiful, shiny pyramid, which is symbolically Mount Meru or Rupus nigra in the middle of our world, right? Metallic, beautiful. The blue beam energy is shining through it. There's a Hyperborean electrical arc from the anode and cathode plasma volcanoes that's reaching across, keeping this mountain, temple, throne, etc. clean, keeping it shiny for an eternity or for an age at least. But then that beam retracts. The electricity, like the electrolysis or the electrolysis of our world, disappears as the energy is charging and goes down. Now it's subject to oxidation. Now it starts to change colors, and now it starts to become black and have a film and a tarnish on it, giving it the name Rupus nigra, which is what people called it after the beam had retracted. But when it was there, it was brilliant and shiny and white, kind of like the Great Pyramid. At least the legends talk about how the Great Pyramid had a huge shine to it, and it was brilliant and clean and white, right? So anyways, the key is revealed when the tarnish is removed and the electrolysis goes around it, right? And then what comes out of the key? A plasma conduit, or a beam of plasma that shoots up into the sky, touches the sky, and gives us our typical Jim Donovan. Hey, thank you for your donation. I appreciate you. Gives us our typical beam of plasma, our column of plasma, our rod god, our light that reaches up and touches the heavens. Now take a look at this. I'm going to show you this quite a few times in this presentation. It branches out at the top. That has a lot to do with the electromagnetics of our world. Up there towards the top of that physical barrier. It will branch out. These are the arms of the key that we looked at earlier at the top, right? This is Atlas's arms holding up the sky or holding up the world. Oh, I got Thai Plasma Apocalypse. Wow, $50 donation. Says, keep going, bro. Oh, I do like your new name. That's awesome. And then we got Jin2 Gone also with another donation. Thank you, Jin. Thank you, all of you. You're very kind. Super appreciate it. I didn't put the notifications on the screen just because I wanted to make for a better presentation. But let's check this out. So we got our sky beams, right? Here it is again. And he says, what am I looking at? What you're looking at is the phoenix. Okay? This is the creature that is born again out of its own demise, out of its own death, out of its own ashes. In the place where it died, it rises up again. They'll show you this green to represent like the North Pole, even though they're in New York in the movie, right? Symbolically, this is, you see the bird symbolism, right? I'm not the only one that sees that, right? That there's a bird. Oh, hold on. Let me make it a little smaller. So boom, that's a bird spreading its wings. So that plasma beam shoots up, and then it'll branch out, creating this sort of Y up in the sky, which is actually the ancient letter Vav, or the number 6, right? It spreads out, and then it creates these little torrents of plasma, which create feathers, or what look like feathers up in the sky. Now, Optimus Prime is mean. He's a mean old Optimus Prime in this movie. I love it. This reminds me so much when I was a kid. They did a good job on this. And he goes, away home. What am I looking at? Away home. So all the people that feel like Earth is a crazy messed up place, you don't want to be here anymore, you want to escape, you want to get out of here, etc. The movies seem to be indicating the way out, finding your way to the middle of the maze, getting to the center of the labyrinth where there is this beanstalk, where there's this reed that grows up from one world to another world that you can take up to the Sipabu, up to the mouth of Chronos, up to the plasma crossing or whatever, and you can get out of here and you can go visit and wander around a fractalverse or go visit another alternate Earth. Charles Wilson, hey, thank you. I appreciate your comment. That was very kind of you to say. All right, so he says away home. Boom. I just want to remind you again, away home, a way out, or a way in. You could also go down right there too, all right? All right, so he says, calling all Autobots. Calling all Autobots. I love doing the voices. Now, let's take a look at this symbol. You see that symbol right there? Let's break this down real quick. This is going to be a long presentation, just so you know. I hope you're all right. All right, so check this out. This is the Autobot symbol, right? Many of us remember the classic symbol from the 80s or the 90s growing up. This is directly related to Mount Meru. How? This is why they're good guys. I'm going to show you. First, let's break down the word Autobot. Auto means self, one's own, by yourself, doing it alone, by yourself, right? So what does bot mean? Well, bot comes from robot. Robot means mechanical person. Also, a person whose work or activities are entirely mechanical. Robots, okay? People that are on a loop. People that are doing the same things over and over and over and over again. You get the point, right? robot does not mean something made out of metal that looks like us who are made out of flesh. Robot is basically something that is stuck in a loop, something that can't get out. So what is an Autobot, right? An Autobot is something that works for itself, something that is autonomous, something that doesn't report to the orders or the commands of something else. Now, if you continue down under the etymology of robot, it says it's from rabu, which means slave in Old Slavic, or orbu, which is interesting, from the Proto-Indo-European orba, which means to pass from one status to another. Kind of like another word that sounds similar, which is Iber, or Hebrew, to cross over from one condition in life to a different one, typically a better one, right? So somebody who is an autonomous robot is somebody who's been set free, basically. It's no longer a slave. That's what Autobot basically means. From the root orba, now this is actually orphan, okay? So the word robot is directly related to the word orphan. So you see a lot of orphan symbolism in the movies. It's like every character these days is an orphan, or at least there's some character in the movie that's going to be an orphan, I promise, right? They don't have a mom, they don't have a dad. Well, that's the blue beam that shoots up. It doesn't really have, parents or whatever. Unless you want to call it the mother, the virgin mother could be its parents, I guess. Now it says orphan is from the Proto-Indo-European root orbo, from the root orb, which means to change allegiance, to pass from one status to another, which is why they're orphans, right? They have changed from being led by their parents to being led by somebody else. That's what it means. It means a change, somebody who is under a new orders, you could say, right? It's all it depends on how you want to describe it. Now, mechanical, right? Robots are mechanical. Let's look that up. The second definition is of a person or an action not having or showing thought or spontaneity. Right? Robots can't be spontaneous. They're set on a program. They're in a loop. They're going over and over and over doing what they're commanded to and told to do. They don't have free will. Interesting. They're not able to be spontaneous. All right. Now, hey, Cat Van Du, thank you so much for gifting memberships to people in the chat. I super appreciate you. Now, let's check out this symbolism on the Autobot symbol here. Now, I want to show you something. I'm going to just color by numbers real quick. First, we have the opening in the sky. Okay, a little hole at the top of the dome. That's the opening in the sky, or in the movie, it's Kron. What was his name? Chronos. I forgot the dude's name already. Kron something Kron. I forgot his name. Anyways, he's the bad guy, right? The hole in the sky, the evil eye. But then we have the blue beam. And Mount Meru right down there at the bottom, the plasma volcano, the black mountain, the magnetic mountain, shooting up a blue beam, touching the hole in the sky, which is how it often is portrayed. And then we have the anode and the cathode on either side, which create and wrap around Mount Meru, or the Garden of Eden and the lands that surround it, right? Then we have the wings of the phoenix, or the bluebird of happiness, or the thunderbird, or however you want to see it, right? Which all together create a stick figure in the sky, which at the bottom would be the earth, right? Which is a crater, which is representative of the island that is a crater valley at the top of the world that houses Mount Meru in the middle. Right? So that's all the symbolism right there of the Autobots, or people who have that blue beam, good vibe energy that I talk about. Our ancestors, some of us have ancestors that are from this part of the world, and they stayed there for a millennia, just being filled with energy and good vibrations. Here's another example. This would be like the Thunderbird, basically, right? You can see a sort of a head or a beak at the top if you want it to face directly forward. Oftentimes we would make it face the side because it depends on where you are in the world looking at it. Here's another example, right? I'll just compare the two right there. There's the Thunderbird, which is often blue if they're, drawn out or whatever. And then they have a little circle. So that's the head of the Thunderbird, basically, right? And you have like the little anode and cathode as the tails down there. This is also called the Kanga. The Squatterman symbolism, the glyph that's seen in many rock formations across the world by the millions. I have not counted them all, but it's probably millions, okay? And you'll notice there's two little dots right there too, right? Now the Thunderbird, if you take a look at different Thunderbirds, especially on totem poles, you'll notice that they put those two dots on their wings. On each wing will have a dot. Here's another glyph, just an example of a rock carving of the same type of thing. I took the totem pole. Now let me zoom in on this. I want to show you how they have those 2 dots on the actual totem pole. See that? Sometimes these wings look like butterfly wings instead of bird wings, but they put these 2 dots up here because those are little turbulence from the plasma that branches off and creates little plasma balls, or plasma ball lightning, you could say, that just stays up there spinning around up in the air. Sometimes one will disappear, sometimes another will disappear, sometimes it'll be 1, sometimes it'll be 2. It all depends on what's happening up there in the upper atmosphere. Anyways, back to the movie. Now, this dude jumps in the car. He's trying to actually steal this car because he needs money to help his brother out who's sick or whatever. And he's trying to get out. And he's like, the car started by itself. We talked about this. Cars being sentient and coming alive by themselves when we broke down the movie Maximum Overdrive. If you want to, go check out my go check out my Truth in Movies playlist, right? You'll see all kinds of jewels and gems, classic movies of old. These are all some of my favorites, but this movie right here is all about cars that come to life and have a life all on their own. So he jumps into the car and he's like, it's possessed. It is possessed. It is possessed by a spirit or by energy that is in abundance in our world, so much that it turns on electronics. It turns on mechanical objects the world across. They all will turn on. This is, in Terminator, they call it Skynet, right? In Pixar, it's the movie Cars. Basically, it's a post-apocalyptic world. There's all this stuff that humans clearly made, right? But there's no humans around because it's the apocalypse. The movie Cars is the apocalypse. It's a post-apocalyptic world. And the energy is still there. So it brings these things to life. It brings these cars and planes and all kinds of stuff, right? Now, they can only act, I would assume, according to their function, right? So, the brave little toaster might be able to, like, get hot and then not get hot or whatever. But it's going to be limited to that. I don't know if a toaster will be able to move around, but, I'm not saying it's impossible. But anyways, that's plasma possession, okay? And it can happen to people, and it will happen to people, but it will especially happen to those objects and vessels that don't already have a spirit inside of them, right? Now we get back to the movie and he says, what are you, some sort of a possessed car or something? And he's like, no, man, I'm an alien, right? I'm not a possessed car. What is that, dude? I'm an alien. Well, that's a more accurate way to describe it because the possessed car, the actual life force inside of it is the energy. Not the car itself. The car's terrestrial. The car's made here on Earth, right? But what brings it to life, the actual entity inside of it, is its spirit, right? Just like spirits inside of us, right? This one's called Mirage. He's super cool. I like Mirage. I vibe with Mirage. I'm going to show you that symbol on his chest here in just a bit too. He says, Optimus Prime's pissed that there's a human in the bunch. And he's like, you were told to stay hidden. And he's talking to Mirage. Now, these giant cars, they represent many different things, okay? One of the things they also represent is gigantism and those creatures, aliens, that come down from other worlds who are huge. They're gigantic because they left space or heaven or whatever you want to call it, where there is no pressure, right? Where they grow to gigantic sizes. Everything out there is huge. That's the macrocosm out there beyond the rim of the world, beyond the sky, basically, right? So when things come down into this world and the pressure, the dome goes back up, or the electromagnetic barrier goes back up, pressure starts to increase and increase and increase, shrinking everything down very small. So those things that are new that come up from inside the earth, or even especially those things that float down, they are going to be giant alien creatures, right? You can call them what you want to, but they will be giants. Right? So he says, you were told to stay hidden. Now that's also a directive, especially in Star Trek. If you're a Star Trek fan, that's one of the prime directives. If you go into another world, another Earth, and you're skipping and playing cosmic chutes and ladders and stuff, you're supposed to stay hidden. When you go into these new worlds, you don't just come down with your rockets and lasers and cell phones and tablets of destiny and stuff and show them to the people who, are basically reverted back to being cavemen. You know what I mean? Like, that's what happens to modern society. When we go through an apocalypse, most of you out there, okay, you might know how to use a cell phone, but you know how to make one? Nah. So guess what you're going to become? A caveman, once again. And we're already getting ready with the mentality, I believe, in this world. Hey, thanks for the kind compliment, Get Money Jones. Super appreciate it. That was super nice to say. All right, so he says, you were told to stay hidden. That's one of the prime directives, okay? They're supposed to be watchers, not participators, at least to begin with, right? You don't want to go around instantly just changing, you know, the future of an entire world or whatever. Now, that's not my rule. That's some sort of space cop rule. There seems to be space cops too. I don't know. Fractalverse cops. I don't know what they're called. But anyways, so we get back to the Transformers, and this chick has beams of light, or Chronos, or chronos, or strong beams that come out of her face, right? Horns, you could say. It's actually beams that come out of her face because she is plasma possessed. Her spirit is amplified. That's a strong energetic force inside of a body that causes light to be seen coming out in a dark place like this little warehouse that they're in. You can expect that when your soul becomes amplified and you have little flashlight eyes in the dark after the apocalypse. All right, so she says multiple commendations, a wizard with electronics. There's wizard reference. And they see the key and he says, it was thought to be lost thousands of years ago. So as was Mount Meru, right? As is Atlantis, as is all of these lost island continents and stuff like that, Lemuria and stuff like that are thought to be lost. They're not lost. They're under the water, right? Until the water is going to be removed one day and you'll see it all. Actually, it's starting to be removed already. You see like the lakes and stuff, they're all disappearing. All right, back to this key. He says it was once used to open space-time portals. Yes, totally. So that beam shoots up into the sky, opens a portal up in our world, and he says to energon-rich planets throughout the universe. Energon. We're going to come back to energon. That's interesting. The energon is like this this sort of element, this metallic element or substance. It can also be liquid and stuff, but this is what the Transformers used to stay alive, right? It gives them eternal life, basically. It powers them as well. But then look, they show you these interesting little glyphs that are written on the key. Watch this. We're going to decipher these glyphs. Now, without looking at all, you can automatically tell that there's two that are the exact same. This one has a little cup, a line, a cup, and a dot. This one also has a cup, a line, a cup, and a dot. So you know these are two exact same letters. Now, if you're a crossword player, you probably know where I'm getting at, right? There's only certain consonants that will have two in a row, right? And if your word is only 4 letters long, it's not likely that there's 2 consonants right in the middle, so those are probably vowels, right? Interesting. Well, fortunately, I have a cheat sheet. Okay, I looked up this language on the internet, and this is an Autobot language. It's actually the Maximals, so the Maximals are the ones that created this, and if we look up these glyphs, we can find that they represent the letters O, D, and R. So if we put them in their respective places back onto the key, it spells door. Boom. A doorway. The key opens a door, right? Isabella, thanks for a donation. When hell's breaking loose, right in the eye. Oh, I like that. That's cool. Right on. I appreciate all the good comments in the chat. You guys are awesome. All right, so it says door on that, and that's not the first. We're going to break down some more of this, right? You could pause the video if you're in the future. That way you can reference all the little letters and what they equal, right? This is why things like the Rosetta Stone are so helpful. So if we go back to that Maltese Falcon that looks like it's got the Roman numerals 7 written on it, right? It's actually the V and then the 101, right? We go back to this little chart right here, and we see it's the letters B and Q. Q was first, B is next. Now, this is the black tarnished Maltese Falcon that contains a treasure on the inside that represents Mount Meru, the magnetic mountain. So check this correlation out that we're about to make. It says QB, which is pronounced Kaba or Kaba. In Phoenician, the Q looks like Saturn or something down here. It's not. It's actually just a glyph that means split, and by extension, an opening. Okay, something that means split and by extension an opening. Up here is the letter B or Beit, which means house. So together, Kaba, it means open house or split house. Interesting. So we actually have a house here that's black, that is a container that's called the Kaaba. which is exactly the same two words or the same two letters, Q and B. I mean, it depends on the region. Sometimes they write K, you know what I mean? Like sometimes it's different letters, but this is it. It is Kaaba. Now, if you're unfamiliar with what the Kaaba is, okay, it's a black cube that is a holy site in Islam. People make pilgrimages to this place in the Middle East in order to go and revere it, and they will walk around it 7 times. You'll see all of these people gathered around the Kaaba stone, which is representative of the Maltese Falcon, which is representative of Mount Meru, the magnetic mountain. Now, this is interesting because the Kaaba actually has these stones inside of it that are black, that are said to be a piece of the holy mountain or a piece of some sort of holy rock from God, right? Look at all the people wrapped around this giant symbolic magnet. Just like iron shavings, if you sprinkle them around an actual magnet, look the exact same as the people. As above, so below, right? The macrocosm and the microcosm, and reversed, the same. It's Mount Meru, symbolism, right? There is a pulling towards it. There is a calling towards it. It's very interesting. This is actually a picture from Mercator's map of the Arctic from, I think, the 15 or 1600s. And it says right here, if you want to check it out, that Rupas Nigra, right? See that? It says Rupus nigra et altissima. That Rupus means rock, basically. Nigra means black or dark. Et altissima, and it looks like a volcano. Okay, et altissima means basically very, very, very steep, or a tower, a towering rock, something that was pulled straight up from the ground by a strong electrical force, right? Now, if we check it out over here, the description. This is Mercator quoting John Dee, I think. I can't remember. It says, under the pole there lies a bare rock in the midst of the sea. Its circumference is 33 French miles, and it is all of magnetic stone. The magnetic pole. The reason the compasses point in that direction. The reason that the animals know where Noah's Ark is and how to get there. Right? All right, back to the movie. Energon-rich planets throughout the universe. Now, Energon originally in the series was basically the blood of Primus, that main transformer, right? He kind of turned himself into a planet. There's a whole backstory. It says Energon is the main substance and valued resource that is used by all Cybertronians for food, so they eat it, medicine, it heals them, and for their own biology. They actually use it as a part of themselves. It is the blood that is flowing inside and throughout of their bodies. It is from the blood of their creator, Primus. I'm going to tell you right now, Primus is the blue beam. Okay? Just like, what's that dude's name? I'm just going to call him Chronos. I forgot that dude's name already. Opticron, I forgot that he's the bad guy, the eye in the sky, you know what I'm talking about, right? Just like he's the depressurization, the hole in the sky, Primus is the blue beam, okay? They're renamed, okay? Because it will die, it'll disappear, it'll reappear, and then they'll give it a brand new name, and they'll think it's a different god, but it's not. It's the exact same energy, just appearing and disappearing from eon to eon to eon to eon, right? So Primus is one of the original names for it in the Transformer series. It says it can be found in energon deposits sent from Cybertron or inside of Cybertronians. So this is very interesting. This is a valuable resource, and they're looking for this. These watchers who are supposed to stay hidden or whatever land on these new worlds, and they start looking for energon, which is some sort of element that is very special that can heal people, that they can eat as well, just like the manna from the gods, right? Or ambrosia and stuff like that. All right, I'm going to get back to Energon in just a bit, towards the end. Now he says he could slip. He's referring to his human friend, right? So Mirage up there, the giant, he's referring to the human buddy that he just made that was trying to steal him. He says he could slip right through one of them little doors. He could go steal that key, right? Basically, the giants are saying that the reason humans become so useful, right, towards the time of the apocalypse, is because of our size. We are tiny, and we can slip right through little doors and entryways and stuff, just like hobbits, so that we can get our hands on the arcane stone, the mysterious stone, Rupas Nigra, the stone that has a light that comes out of it, right? All this symbolism is very similar. Anyways, back to Mirage. Now, check out that symbol right there. That's just like he's got a flux capacitor in his chest, right? That's because that's exactly what that is. That is the ancient glyph Vav, which is a hook or a tent peg, like we talked about earlier. It's the tent peg of the world. That is a nail that's driven down into the world and is seen as supporting or holding up the sky. In the old world, nails didn't have a flat top. In the old world, they had like a hook that comes out, and you tie your rope around it and stuff to keep your tent from flying away. Anyways, that's very interesting. Now keep your eye also on this one too. We're going to go over a few of these. This one's Chet. Aleph, Bet, Gemel, Dalet. Oh, that's Hey, actually. Interesting. That's Chet down there. So keep your eye on both of these because they're very similar to one another. They're kind of interchangeable sometimes. We'll come back to that one. All right. So here's the tent peg. They show you this again. This is the phoenix. This is the bat symbol. This is all kinds of stuff that shoots up into the air. This is the symbol that you will see, like in Ghostbusters, right? When he talks to the horse and he says, wait for the sign. Then all the captives will be released. And he runs off like a crazy madman. This is the sign. Here's your sign, okay? When you see this, this is where you need to get to, all right? Because the world's going to be a dark, corrupt, evil, messed up place full of Fantazoids and zombies and robots that come alive who are plasma possessed, people who are plasma possessed, plasma that's flying around in spirit form and stuff, you know, trying to dock with your face and plasma possess you to make you a killer, because that's what it's here to do, is to reset everything and kill everything. That's just the plasma that comes down, okay? You want to get to that, which is the good vibe energy, the good ionized oxygen that comes up so that you don't have those problems, right? All right, then we have Mirage turns into a dump truck. Basically, this is just dump truck symbolism. When you see the dump truck or trash can or garbage bins and stuff like that in the movies, they'll show them to you all the time, right? Certain things they show you all the time. This is one of them. This represents the steampunk world, basically, right? All the garbage and debris that falls back down after it gets sucked up during the depressurization, the stuff that Chronos spits back out is just trash. It's just debris. It's garbage that will pile up all over the place. And steampunk survivors is what they will become, will sift through all of our modern trash, trying to find stuff that's of value to them, because their whole system's been ripped away. The world is dead, or not dead. The world has been reset. Okay. And they're going to try to find things that are valuable. And if they can't figure out how to put something back together, they'll repurpose it and it will become the steampunk era and the steampunk age. Here is that same thing over again. I want to make sure every time they showed you this beam that shoots up into the sky and branches out at the top, I wanted to make sure I took a picture so that you could see it, right? Because many of you watching, you're going to see different things when you look at this. Okay. When you look at this, you might not see what I see. You might see something different because of our perception filters. Now imagine it's real life. Imagine the apocalypse comes and you look out and you see all these different forms of shape-shifting plasma undulating about in the wind, following electrical currents in the world and stuff. You're going to interpret that however you interpret it. Some might scream past you electrically and you'll hear a banshee. Right? Some might wriggle up there in the sky and you'll see a dragon. It all depends. And these are the ancient forms as they were described a long time ago. Now, plasma can also be underwater. So they show you this, and I'm going to get into this next week, but they show you that there's these lights that come up from out of the ocean and out of the water. This is a huge shout out. There's a really good video that shows you a real life example of plasma in the water. I think it's plasma, done by this channel, which is called That Is Impossible by James. Shout out to you, James. I don't know if you're watching my channel, James LaFleur. He's a cool dude. I like him. Anyways, check this video out. It's called No Way Videos That Will Glitch You for Good. It just came out a few days ago, so I don't know how old it's going to be if you're watching in the future, but it has an example, a video that I'm probably going to try to share later on. Hopefully I'll be able to, of these lights that are seen underwater, right? And these are many different UFO stories that people see, these lights that come up out of the water and stuff. Plasma basically being released from the earth. Now this guy, he's all plasma possessed. So are his little buddies. That's why their eyes are red. You'll notice that the Transformers usually have a lighter color eyes in the blue spectrum, right? So we go back to this museum and the lights go out right when these guys get there, right? These guys might as well be ghosts or whatever. They're strong electrical forces, and when they come near, oh, there's the towers again. I just saw that. When they come near, they did a really good job making the towers look real. That's amazing. When they come near, lights go off. This is why Jason Voorhees, even though he's just a zombie, he's full of electrical energy, which brings him back to life every single time, right? When he comes near, your lights will go bzzz, and they'll start to go off, just like ghosts, you know, they have an effect on your electricity and stuff too. Jim Donovan, wow, thanks for the huge splash in the popcorn, Jim. That's awesome. Yeah. I like your little sticker too. Thanks, Jim. All right. I appreciate everybody's support. You guys are amazing. I hope you're having a good time in the chat too. So now these plasma possessed dudes, these giants, they look down and they see the humans light up. This is interesting. This is just like Attack on Titan. I don't know. There's an anime called Attack on Titan, and the lore says that the Titans, when they're walking around, they don't see in the same spectrum that we do. They see humans with our auras. They see us as little lights down there, just like this robot uses his special mechanical vision to see the human as a little aura of light down there. And they say, what the hell are these things? And you have these weird creatures. These are robots again. These are different types of, you know, robots. They jump up on the wall and they're basically robot versions of Fantazoids. Just like earlier, they showed you robot versions of animals, right? So those are Fantazoids. Fantazoids are otherworldly creatures that drop down and can also come up. You know, there's different classes of them. So you have the heavenly animals and stuff, but you also have insectoids, right? So there's the insectoid race of aliens that is promoted in like alien conspiracy circles and stuff. This is the reality behind it. They're insects. They're giant bugs that live in space that grow to huge sizes, and our Earth will have giant bugs once again. And I've done a video about giant bugs in the old world and how they will return to our world one day when the world is filled with oxygen and a fresh oxygen supply. So the red light goes off in emergency. Symbolizes the sky, the spectrum color shift, the change, turning red, all the lights turning red. You have, just like you got the garbage truck in a lot of movies and so many other symbolism, the coffee, the milk, the spiral staircase is another one, right? Most notably, you'll probably remember this exact same shot from The Matrix, right? The spiral staircase represents going from one reality to another. So you have the red lights that turn on, immediately followed by them taking the spiral staircase, which they're going down it right now. So that means they're going down into the safety of Mount Meru. If they go up, it means they're traveling through the plasma conduits and leaving the Earth through the sky. And she says, hey, stop following me. And he goes, I'm not following you. I'm just escaping in the same direction. So it's the end of the world. This is Ragnarok, and this is a boy and a girl who go down into the earth, right? Just in order to stay safe in the trunk of the tree of life. Now, they show you another one of these Fantazoids. It's hard to see because it's so dark, but it's right here. You can see its eyes right next to the dinosaurs, right? Which are probably just the bones of Fantazoids and ancient monsters that dropped down from the sky or came up from inside of the earth, or were just gigantic from all of the influx of oxygen that we had for another millennium. And we find their bones all over the place. Giants, giant creatures, giant insects, giant behemoths and leviathans and stuff like that. Now, here's one of the animal robots called Air Razor. And they say, what are those things? And she says, Terracons, servants of a dark, hungry god. That would be Chronos, who feeds on entire worlds to sustain himself. Unicron. That's his name. Oh, thank goodness. I put it in there again. Optimus Prime's like, Unicron. Now let's check out Unicron, directly related to Chronos, right? Now, here's a little article on Chronos. This is Chronos. You'll notice he doesn't have horns or anything. It just like looks like a regular Greek god. But if we zoom in, we read this little story, it says Chronos, the god of time, right? Because when you see this god, time resets, basically. Chronos was envisioned as an incorporeal god, serpentine in form, plasma, with 3 heads, that of a man, a bull, and a lion. He and his consort, the serpentine goddess Ananke, or Ananke, Anunnaki, right? Enveloped the primordial egg world, or the world egg, which is that dome over the North Pole that we talked about, in their coils and split it apart. That's Mount Meru splitting, becoming the split mountain whenever it explodes. Split it apart to form the ordered universe of Earth, the sea, and the sky. After this act of creation, the couple circled the cosmos, or were excommunicated beyond the sky, circling around over our heads, giving us our plasmasphere. Circled the cosmos, driving the rotation of the heavens and the eternal passage of time. So the plasma Chronos, or Chronos, however you want to say it, and his consort that were excommunicated outside of our world are just outside of our world, spinning around because they're acting according to electrical forces, right? The light still passes through the dome, giving us a focal point called the sun and stars and other stuff, which all move in accordance to Chronos, which is just beyond on the other side, right? Giving us our concept of time, basically. All right, so now check this out. I want to show you this actual picture. This is super interesting. This is a little motif of Chronos and this circle that he stands in. And this picture probably made, you know, a few hundred years back or whatnot, maybe thousands. I don't know. I don't know what the date on this is, but it's old. Looks exactly like another movie that we broke down, Stargate, doesn't it? Right? Doesn't it look eerily similar to, there's this dude standing in the middle of a literal stargate, or an actual physical gate that's up there in the stars, just like this, right? Or how about the magic mirror, right? That you pass through, like Alice in Wonderland's mirror or whatever. And this one, this is in Snow White. The magic mirror actually has the constellations around it, if you look closely, which means that this mirror is not in front of you. This mirror is above you. They mess with perception sometimes in the movies like that, symbolically. But you also notice that there's these two pillars, or there's four. There's four pillars on either side. So these are the four witnesses around the throne of God. There's other plasma volcanoes up there too that reach up into the heavens. And here he is again with his magic mirror, or his magic portal, or whatever, Chronos once again, right? And a staff, a beam. Now, this is interesting because remember how it says that they broke open that cosmic egg? This is an entity who was born out of that cosmic egg. Let me zoom into this real quick so you can check it out. Phanes. I'm not sure how to pronounce that. Phanes or Phanes. If we go back, let's check them out. So, this person was born out of the cosmic egg. Look what's in his hand. The key. That's in our Transformers movie right now. This hundreds of years, thousands of year old, you know, Greek god or whatever, that basically this is the blue beam, okay? This is a cartoonified version of the blue beam. He's got the snake coil wrapped around him, which is the plasma that shoots up into the air, standing on the fire of Mount Meru, etc. And he's holding on to a pole in one hand, or a beam and a pillar, and then he's holding on to the Vajra in the other hand, basically, right? So if we check this out and read a little backstory on him, Phanes, his name means light bringer. So this is the light bringer. This is there's many different gods that brought the light and stole it from the gods and brought it to humanity, etc., right? It's not fire, it's actual plasma. But in the Orphic tradition, Phanes was the Greek god of creation and life, from whom all subsequent life developed. If comparing the Hesiod and Orphic traditions, then Phanes might be equated to the god Eros, or, you know, many other, Prometheus and stuff like that too, right? So we move on, and he says, yes, and he imbues his servants like Scourge. He imbues them with power, and he is entirely beholden unto Unicron. So that hole that opens up in the sky releases all of this plasma, and people see Medusa and stuff like that, right? But that plasma comes down and it can possess people, okay? Actual humans that have a weak spirit already, it can come down and it's here to destroy, okay? It's here to set things on fire, electrocute things, petrify stuff. It's here to terraform the world. And if it possesses humans, it turns them into psychotic killers who also do the bidding of the plasma as long as it's still connected to its source. Its source is what gives the commands, right? Once the dome goes back up, once that electromagnetic barrier goes back up, it cuts off the commands. So now, if it wants to, it can be free from those. It may be a struggle, okay? It may be difficult, but while you're connected and that plasma docks to your face like a little dream crab or face hugger or something, you go into a dreamlike state and you lose consciousness and you're just a thrall, a slave to the red plasma from above, right? Through his power, he possesses Scourge's soul. So this Autobot, or whatever he is, Transformer, is being possessed. It's not that he wants to do this, it's that he has no choice because he's been plasma possessed by, what was his name? Unicron. Okay, I'm going to remember that from Unicorn. Unicron possesses him. Okay, so beware. I just watched a really good movie last night, just a shout out to another movie. Bird Box Part 2, basically. I don't know what it's called, but it's on Netflix, and it's even done in another language, but wow, it's all about plasma possession. So you saw a glimpse of that in the first Bird Box. The second Bird Box is pretty good if you like the first one, and it's all from the perspective of somebody who is plasma possessed that's trying to fight it off. It's really good. It's really cool. So check that out. Oh, I got a donation from Farida Carolina. Thank you so much, Farida. I always appreciate you. All right, now we go back to Air Razor, who says, we broke the key into two pieces for safekeeping. Now the key is Mount Meru, right? Or the beams of energy that come up from the northern part of the world, right? The key altogether, right? The key altogether is the Squatterman symbolism, it's Atlas, etc. So we broke it in two. I do not know where the other half is. So one half of the key they have found, this is us, okay? I believe I have a good inclination of where these keys are, okay? In the middle, this is a map from the 1500s done by a man named Urbano Monti, right? And if you take a look at it, you'll see that there are these little volcanic islands that are not on our modern maps at all. One is here, the other is here. This one, I'll show you first, I believe is the cathode. This is the island of life. This is the island that receives a bunch of energy, and so it is abundant with life. And actually right here in Latin, it says Polo de Magnete de la Isla de Verde, which means the magnetic pole of the island of life, basically. You could translate verde as being green, but it really means to grow or life, basically, right? The other one, I've already done a video about this, basically says the same thing, but it's called Huri or Husi Arca, which means the house of death, okay, that you stay away from. So you got one volcano on one side of this central island that used to be at the North Pole on many maps, right? One island is called the Island of Life. The other one's called the Island of Death. The anode and the cathode plasma volcanoes that create an electrical arc over this island as they shoot up initially as beams, but they become attracted to each other and pow, touch and create an electrical arc and split by the beam in the middle of Mount Meru, right? All right, cool. Let's move forward. Isn't this a lot? This is so much. Do you guys like this? This is chock full of information, right? As a matter of fact, I need a little sip of water real quick. All right, so the girl is writing these glyphs down, and the bird robot says, if you can track these symbols to Peru, so can the Terracons. So they believe in the movie that it's not at the North Pole. They almost never tell you it's at the North Pole. They think it's in Peru, which is also interesting. We're going to check out Peru here in a minute. But look at these glyphs. There's some new glyphs over here, right? This is interesting. And she says, what is your name? And she says, Elena. And she says, Elena, will you lead us to this temple? So now they're looking for this place symbolically. Okay, this is all Indiana Jones type stuff, but in real life, okay? This is the real Garden of Eden that you really can find, that we really have left breadcrumbs of truth and little hints and suggestions to ourselves collectively through our worldwide subconscious that is brought about when we use our imaginations, right? So imagination is the key. Or for me, it's the key, okay? And this is my medium, movies. I love it. So I hear it. I hear the song of the world, and it vibrates through everything. It vibrates through movies, through music, through songs, through commercials, through, you know, random items in your house. It does it everywhere. This is mine. Anyways, so she says, Elena, will you lead us to this temple? The temple is Mount Meru. So what does Elena mean? It's a Greek female name that means shining light. Isn't that interesting? The shining light will lead you to Mount Meru, basically, is what they're saying. So in the movie, they go to Peru. Now, this is super interesting. You see Machu Picchu back there? Kind of looks like a face, like an open mouth or something sticking up out of the ground, right? Now, Machu Picchu is one of the oldest civilizations or little cities that we have found. One of the oldest remnants of a civilized society, right, in our world. Very interesting place, very interesting location, very interesting terrain, mountains that are just jutting up jaggedly like the fingers of God pulled them straight up into the sky, basically, right? Not like earthquakes pushed them together over millions of years or whatever. All right. Now let's check this out. Machu Picchu is a part of the Inca, or was a part of the Inca Empire. Now, if you look at this up, if you look up the Inca, right? The Inca didn't call themselves the Inca, right? It says also known as the Inca Empire and the Inca Empire, or the Enki Empire, called themselves the Tawan Tawantinsuyu, and its subjects, the Quechua, for the realm of the four parts. Quechua essentially means four parts, right? Like cuatro, right? So the realm of the Inca people call themselves people who were from the realm of the four parts. Hold on. Like, let me go back to that map at the North Pole just real quick, okay? It's hard to see right here, but there are four parts. There's four rivers that divide this central island into four continental islands, basically. So this is the place of emergence for people like many different Native American tribes, the Inca, the Aztec, Mexicans. As a matter of fact, let's check out the origin myth, because you'll see that the Inca origin myth, or the Peruvian origin myth, is the exact same as so many others, especially in Mexico, right? So it says the Inca people were a pastoral tribe in Cusco, in the Cusco area around the 12th century. Indigenous Peruvian oral history tells an origin story of 3 caves, which would be the plasma volcano entrances, right? 4 brothers and 4 sisters, which are four energetic, positive and negative, right? Which are the 4 columns in the middle. 4 brothers and 4 sisters stepped out of the middle cave. That would be Mount Meru. Out of the side caves, which would be the anode and the cathode, or the boy and the girl, out of the side caves came the people who were to be the ancestors of all of the Inca clans. Ayar Manco, one of the gods, carried a magic staff made of the finest gold, or a yellow staff, just like you see in the movie. Where his staff landed, the people would live. So the people emerged out of the earth, out of these caves, and they wandered about, right, on the rest of the world, going southward, and they were told, wherever you see my staff, that's where you should settle. Wherever you see a beam of light shooting up into the sky, that is a place of life. That is a place of abundance. That is a place where you should settle down and create a polis, or a city, right? So they had them here in Machu Picchu, where there are extensive underground cavernous systems. They had them in Mexico, where the Mexicans were told to look for what looks like a cactus shooting up out of the ground with a bird on top of it, spreading its feathers, right? Eating a snake or plasma or whatever. It's all the same story over and over and over again. Now, Ayar Kachi boasted about his strength and power, and his siblings tricked him into returning to the cave to get a sacred llama. The word llama equates to the word flame or light. And he was turned into stone, petrified. Interesting. Now it says, finally they reached Cusco and the staff sank into the ground, right? So they saw this beam of light up there and it retreated and it went down back into the earth during the time when it would charge, bringing us into our modern age. So they settled there, just like they would settle in the Four Corners in the Grand Canyon, where beams of light shot up out of the Grand Canyon, or other places too, right? Now back to the movie, okay? We're in Peru. We're in Peru, and the bad guys are looking, and the good guys are looking and stuff, and they say, oh, this building, that's Santo Domingo. The Spanish built it on top of an old Inca temple. Now look at this construction, right? There's that dome on top. The domes are designed to attract electricity. Santo Domingo, when the Spanish came, they conquered the Inca Empire. Okay, they came, they took it over, they basically just slaughtered everybody and took over all of the Inca Empire. And the Spanish, on top, in this exact spot in real life, built a type of church on top of an existing temple that was already there. Okay, now let's check this out. It says Santo Domingo. Spanish colonists built the convent, basically a church, of Santo Domingo on this site, demolishing the temple that was already there before it, this cathedral, or cathode. Nearby is an underground archaeological museum in the modern day that contains mummies, textiles, and sacred idols from the site. There's an underground museum right here in real life right now that you could go. Why is there a museum underground? Right? Because this is the place where they saw that beam of light, that staff of their god, or whatever it was, right? Land. And they saw it and they went there because there are cave systems in this area, in this region, just like many other regions, okay? Many holy mountains and holy sites and holy caves and stuff like that, where there was an abundance of energy that would come up out so much that you could see beams of light that shot up into the sky and people would settle there. They can't see him now because it's retracted. It's gone back into charge. Now, they're looking at it and he goes, oh, Inti Raymi. Now, Inti Raymi is a festival in Peru, okay? And they're like, oh, we can't go down there. They're celebrating Inti Raymi. Inti Raymi, if you look it up, is basically their version of Christmas, okay? And it happens during our summer solstice. But remember, Peru is in the southern hemisphere. So our summer solstice is their winter solstice, right? So this is an extremely important holy day, or a day that was set apart for important reasons. Not just to sell things and goods and exchange gifts and stuff like that. It was because their ancestors were making sure their families would be safe in the future from the next apocalyptic event. So this is their version of Christmas, basically. Or you could say our 4th of July. This is when we actually celebrate our 4th of July, about 2 weeks later. Now it says, in the territory south of the equator, the Gregorian months of June and July are winter months, and it is held on June 24th, which is 3 days after the summer solstice, right? The summer solstice is... Now, let me tell you about this celebration. Exactly like Christmas, they would, a long time ago, make sacrifices and they would pray to the sun god that it would come back, because to them it was going so far north, they were afraid that one day it would keep going north. Just like over here during our Christmas time, we would see it going so far south, and we would know that the time once was when the sun kept on going and it would disappear. To them, they had the opposite effect. They watched it going north during the summer solstice, during the summertime apocalypse, which is what we're coming into right now, which means that this is an important holiday to observe, actually, to be indoors, to light candles, to get ready for the apocalypse, basically. And they would celebrate 3 days later. Why? Because that's the time period that they had if they could see that the sun was coming back. If the sun started coming back after 3 days from the solstice or the sun stop, right? If it started coming back, there was not going to be an apocalypse. So they celebrated, right? And this is a huge, big deal. Everyone was happy. They were like relieved. They're like, oh man, thank goodness, right? Same reason why we celebrate Christmas, essentially 3 days after the winter solstice. Same exact thing. When the light is born, the blue beam shoots up out of the world, etc. Now, they get to this little section of this old church or whatever, and if you look at it, right, if you take a look at it, this is a real place. This is the actual church. They say this, the key's got to be here somewhere. You notice there's little rock pillars in there too, right? So the key that we're looking for is the North Pole. It's Mount Meru, symbolically speaking, right? So if we go back to that same map that I showed you earlier, that's from the 1500s that I actually have up on my wall, right? Hold on. Anyways, I have this map up on my wall. And if the key is at the center of this map, the center of this map is represented by the letter G. Now in the movie, they say the key should be here somewhere, and they show you this pillar that's shooting up out of the ground that's a rock. And this strange strange Autobot glyph or whatever, right? What letter do you suppose that glyph is? It's the letter G, right? The letter G, which is the same letter G that they show you right in the middle of this map, which is the same letter G that the Masons will use for their god and stuff like that. So let me explain that real quick, because some people might be new, all right? So the letter G, the ancient picture of that was a foot, and it meant destination. That meant this is the place you go to. This is the place you should go to. This is where you will set your foot on and arrive at. So interesting. Wow. It's just in your face. Now, they show you from above all these little interesting glyphs. Thank you, Cat14. Super appreciate you. Now, check out this glyph in the middle. This is hard to see, so I'm going to zoom into it. But you see right there in the middle? There's this trident. There's this sort of pitchfork glyph. There's all this plasma symbolism all over the place and ball lightning, toroidal fields and stuff. But look at it right here. You see this little glyph? That's the one we're going to focus on next. This is the Het letter that I showed you earlier. I think I have a picture of it. Did I? No, I showed you a picture of it earlier though, okay? So this is the letter H basically. There's a hard H and there's a soft H. So one is He and one is Het. They sometimes were used interchangeably, but it says here the corresponding South Arabian letters are this, a pitchfork, basically. Same exact glyph, right? or sometimes it's got a little squiggly underneath it. And it says over here that it's related to the Ge'ez letters, Haut and Harm. What does that remind you of, right? Anyways, this letter in the Phoenician means boundary, specifically an outdoor boundary, something that is a marker outdoors. And it has it right there in the middle. Farida, there you are. Farida's the one that sent me the map. So I super appreciate it. Thank you so much, Farida. It's beautiful. All right, so they go to this marker. The door opens up, right? They found the G. They went to Mount Meru. Now they're going to go down into the earth. So this is Leaf and Leaf-Trazir. This is Adam and Eve returning to the Garden of Eden. Basically, this is the anode and the cathode being activated. This is a man and a woman. This is mankind finding safety within the trunk of the tree of life, or Mount Meru. Okay, so they're going to go down into the bowels of the earth. Meanwhile, Scourge shoots that bird, right? And Scourge represents the plasma, the red plasma, that plasma possesses people and makes them crazy and angry and stuff. And the bird gets shot, and she says when Scourge touches you, he leaves a mark. I mean, if you've ever been tempted by evil or hatred or envy or jealousy or stuff like that, you know what the bird's talking about. It leaves a scar, it leaves a mark, right? It's not easy to get rid of. So he says, we use the transwarp key to visit young worlds. Now, these are the animals, okay, or fractalverse animals, fractalverse travelers. I believe that the animals that we have in the modern day are almost all related to creatures that just fell out of the sky or came up out of the earth itself, and that they have evolved and they have adapted and changed, and we just got used to them, okay? But if you start looking at them, they all start looking kind of alien, right? At least to a human, at least to me, they do. It says, we use the transwarp key to visit young worlds. The Nazca lines, the temple at Tikal, this is her asking him, and he says, we cannot claim credit for human ingenuity. So the movie is saying the Nazca lines and the temple at Tikal are not done by aliens, that those were done by ancient human civilizations with advanced technology, basically is what I'm getting from the movie. And he says, when we arrived, they shared their world with us. And then they show you, like, you know, somebody who's related to ancient Peruvians. And that's exactly what happens. Okay, all of these ancient animals, creation myths, the animals dropped down from the sky or came up from within the earth itself, right? And that the humans were made, the terrestrial humans that were already here were made out of clay, or they came up out of the mud. They were the mud people. They came up out of the earth, right, basically. And then this one's plasma possessed. Remember how Scourge touched her? So when that plasma touches you and you get all plasma possessed, you know, you get like the plasma eyes that we were talking about, like probably eating too much sea bugs, and then you get your, just like we broke down in that last vampire movie. What did I say that was? It was what's that damn disease when you eat too much shellfish or whatever? I forgot what that's called. You get your powers, fudge, I forgot what it's called. Your eyes turning yellow or whatever. Anyways, you get these Sith eyes, all right? So red eyes or whatever. She's all plasma possessed, eating way too much lobster. And what do you call it? Scorpions or crabs or giant sea bugs, basically, which they show you in the movie. Okay, they actually show you that. Now, he says, your friend here will find peace. Bumblebee died, okay? Sorry. But Bumblebee died, so they lay him down on this rock, and he becomes Sleeping Beauty, basically, or Snow White or whatever. And he goes into this little mini sleep of death. But then they show you, this is a hand, this is Optimus Prime's hand touching a rock. That rock has all these little slivers of this material that they call energon. And he says, this is raw energon. And the monkey says, I'm sorry, but in this state, it's inert. It would take a great power to ignite it. This is a big deal because the rock that they put Bumblebee on is full of this energy source called energon. But in the state that it's in, it's inert. It can't give life and restore life and stuff like that, right? He says in this state, it's inert. It would take a great power to ignite this energon, which is this valuable material that these heavenly watcher beings came down and mined for and looked for. Not gold, okay? Probably not gold. Anyways, all right, so she opens up her diary. This is super interesting. Here's a brand new glyph. Let's check this glyph out. Let's check this out. It says right here, west, with an arrow pointing right at the glyph. I don't know if you can see the arrow. See that? Little arrow says west, And then we have this brand new glyph right here. Now, west in the old world meant down. These are esoteric and arcane cardinal points or cardinal directions. Okay, there was no infinite east or infinite west or whatever. Okay, there was. Why isn't the TV working? Sorry, it gives me extra light. So west was down into the bowels of the earth. East was upwards. So this says west, and it's got this glyph right here. So what does this glyph stand for? X. Now the X is the Tet, or the symbol of the Tet, which basically it's that island that's crossed by those 4 rivers, okay? So that island in the middle of the world oftentimes is where the X marks the spot, or sometimes it's X with a circle around it, which is the Tet, right? And he says, he's distorted, he's in my mind. So this little raven thing is plasma possessed. The monkey says, Noah, guard the key. Now this is the story of Noah and the ark as well. Okay, all these animals come together at Mount Meru, which is where Noah's ark is. And this is the actual story of Noah gathering all the animals to him, or Adam, in the Garden of Eden, and all the animals of the world come to him so he can name them. All the animals are following the electromagnetic calling of Mount Meru. Okay, they follow the electrical currents of the world, or the electromagnetic currents of the world. They can sense it, they can feel it. So can you if you tune into it, right? So there's this calling from Mount Meru, and the animals are called to go there. Now, when all the animals go there, they're going to meet up with a bunch of weird space animals called Fantazoids that come down and up from inside. So there's a war at Mount Meru, okay, between animals and space Fantazoids and giant bugs and giant alien creatures that arrive, and everybody's just fighting. Okay, there's all kinds of weird stuff happening all at once, and it'll settle down, you know. But at first, there's a huge war. It's a great war. Now she says, I can't hold it back. She can't control. She's too tempted by this plasma, basically. Now they show you this mountain. This is where that beam is going to shoot up from. This is a plasma volcano. This is symbolically Mount Meru, or Rupus nigra, right? Steep, lofty plasma volcano. Eventually, all volcanoes, I believe, are going to become plasma volcanoes, because they all reach down into the bowels of the earth, and they're going to be decongested, and all that stuff's going to blow out. It's going to get sucked up and eaten by Chronos, so you don't have to worry about all the smoke and stuff like that. Some of it will come back down, you know, but if the atmosphere is depressurizing, like I theorize, you don't have to worry about, you know, all that stuff landing on you or coming back down or anything like that. There'll be winds and stuff, so you don't want to be sucked up into the air with lava and stuff like that that's already floating up. So you definitely want to make sure you don't get sucked up. And then he takes the 2 pieces of the key, symbolically the anode, the cathode, together, touches them, puts them together, and he says, awaken, almighty Unicron, your time has come. It puts them together, and what happens? All the volcano starts to decongest, and all that lava and stuff starts erupting out. And this thing literally physically creates an electrical arc, right? So these 2 pieces, the anode and the cathode, they create an electrical arc. It starts to spin and stuff. And this weird thing comes up out of the middle of Mount Meru, Rupus nigra, Mount Sinai, Mount Olympus, etc. Hey, Frida, thank you. I appreciate you. You're so kind. So this is the plasma volcano, okay? And this is where the animals gather. This is where the people who are wise will make a journey to. This is the quintessential Kaaba stone that we talked about. And Optimus Prime says he's in the fight until all are one. He says that all the time. Until all are one. That's because they all have a little piece of the soul of Primus, their creator. Right? Just like we are in this fight and in this crazy world until all are one. The purpose for us is to unite, to come together. Unity, right? That's the purpose for good guys and bad guys. Bad guys they have the guise of separation, but really they want to recruit everyone to being bad and evil. So does good. So that's the main purpose of every religion and every religious group and everything, is to all be one, to return to oneness, which is sort of the core fundamental of like Taoism and stuff like that. All right, so we get back to the book, and she says together they must complete the access code. So off the top of my memory, this new one right here is X. This one right here is, what was that? Q, and then B. So Kaaba. This page on the right says Kaaba. That's the Kaaba stone, or Mount Meru. And then the X on the left represents the 4 lands that are cut off or crisscrossed by those 4 rivers, right? Or the Tet, right? So if you say X, Sometimes you can say gza. Okay, so egza is sort of how we say it today, but a long time ago it was more like ksha, ksha, gzha, 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 right? That. Basically, it's like a J sound sometimes. So ja or ja ka ba. This is a name, Jacob, right? Jacob or Jacob. There's different ways to say this name, but it means to take the place of somebody else. It means to supplant. It means survivors, okay? We, the survivors, are going to take the place of the people who now rule the world. Also, there will be new additions to our world that will take the place of all the people that will die in the apocalypse, which will be a great many, which is sad, but, you know, there's a time for mourning for that. Anyways, he says we have a small window that before the portal opens, and then they show you the plasma from Mount Meru shooting straight up into the sky. Now you'll notice Unicron up here, or the sky, is shaped like an eyeball. It's a dome. This is an inverted mini dome, like that, okay, at the top of the world, which is, this is hard to explain, but the firmament of old was not just a perfect dome. Okay, because when you put a hole in the top of a perfect dome and then you put electricity back through it, it creates another dome because of the shape. All right. Now, whenever you have the gases up there sublimate and freeze and become ice again and give you a brand new firmament, that ice will take the shape of that mini dome that's upside down, which will then project the moon up into our sky. Anyways, so this is the sword that's killing the eye of, you know, the evil eye or whatever, right? Now, they're showing you this volcano, but in reality, the volcano is just a small representation on this map. This is like the crater right there. See that? That crater is actually the outer portion of that central island that we talked about. It's a valley and has all these mountains that come up all the way around, like jagged edges. That's why they're showing you this particular volcano has all these mountains all the way around it. And they're saying, we are too small as maximals, but not for humans. The cheetah comes out and she's like, you know, Chitara or whatever, comes out and says, not for humans. So this is another, you know, the humans being hobbits, basically. Okay, we're tiny. I don't care how tall you are as a human right now. You're tiny in comparison to what your offspring will be and their offspring and your ancestors will be going into the post-apocalyptic world where there is an increase in buoyancy. Okay, they're going to grow to gigantic sizes in a world that has fresh oxygen and low increased buoyancy and stuff. They're going to become giants. Okay, so right now, the little hobbits, the little modern humans, are small enough to get to Mount Meru through the cave systems that exist. And if you pay attention, many governments of the world have been working on little cave systems around the Arctic Circle, and they're hiding them, and they're covering them up with like government projects that they're releasing and saying, oh, it was just a project to do this, or it was just a project to do that. That's why we're digging through the ice. That's why we're, you know, digging all these caves up there in Greenland or wherever, right? They're trying to get to the North Pole, okay? To leave, basically. So is NASA, so is Elon, all those people. All right, so they run through the little cave system. Now, keep in mind, when the anode and the cathode are going, these mountains and all that stuff tends to be very electrified, okay? So if you're a big, huge giant, it's going to be hard for you to get through tiny little caves and stuff like that. And it's going to be hard to return to Hyperborea or to return to the Garden of Eden if the beams are already up. And there's an electrical field or snake or serpent or whatever that's spinning around it. Like that's going to be, you don't want to do that. You touch it and it'll zap you, basically. All right. Now you can see the giants. They say Maximals, Autobots, roll out. And you can see there's a gathering together at Mount Meru of the animals, the alien animals that are all gigantic, by the way. Like there's a giant cat. There's whatever a rhinoceros is. That's an alien. Like, I don't know what that is. Like, what is that? That's an alien. Gorilla, stuff like that. So there's this coming together at the apocalypse of things that have been plasma possessed, which are the mechanical objects, cars, whatever. I don't know if the cars are going to go to Mount Meru, but you know what I'm saying, right? They all come together. They coalesce at Mount Meru. And then the Fantazoids that are represented by all these weird alien creatures that come out of that sky god. They drop down from the sky god. They land on Mount Meru. That's the Anunnaki, the fallen angels, whatever you want to call them. And there's a war in the heavens, or whatever you want to call it. And then the human little hobbit people, they go through their little tunnel. This is a robot, but it says it chitters, right? Chittering is a sound an insect makes. So this is basically showing you a gigantic macrocosmic insect that falls down into our world that I call a Fantazoid. All right. Now, here's the view from above. So if you're outside of the sky looking down, you will see there's all these little creatures and stuff. They look like little dots from above, but they're all falling down into the earth. They descend. And remember, there's a hole there. So depressurization is in effect, and there's increased buoyancy, which means they don't fall down and die and slam into the earth. They float down safely and land. So when that happens, the atmosphere is torn apart and it's rapidly depressurizing, which will cause mist and fog and clouds, or what looks like smoke, to roll in the entire world across, especially across the west, what do you call it? The northern hemisphere or whatever. I don't know, like on the top of the world, right? That'll be affected first. So they show you this in the movie. Sorry, my voice, I'm like losing my voice. I've been talking forever, man. I'm so sorry. We're about to wrap things up though. Right? We're still live streaming, right? I hope so. All right. Yes, we are. All right, cool. All right, now here's the blue beam. All right, shooting up out of Mount Meru. It's electrical in nature. Shoots up into the sky, and the moment it does that, it sends this shockwave through all of the local rocks and metals, and it gives them the charge that is needed to bring Bumblebee to life, basically. And what I believe this is a mythic metal that was called orichalcum. Orichalcum. Now, some people will spell it in different ways, and they say it's a metal. It's a mythic metal that is mentioned in several ancient writings, including the story of Atlantis in a book that was written by Plato. He mentions this glowing element that had medicinal properties. It was magical in nature, etc. The Romans translated orichalcum as orichalcum or chalcum, which was thought to mean literally gold copper, because they're translating the word aura here as gold. I don't think that's appropriate. I think it's actually closer to shiny or brilliant or bright, right? So bright copper. This is not really copper at all. This is a different element that is radioactive, that glows, that can be used for healing. So, for example, there was a time when many people were, and some people still are, looking into this element called radium, which is radioactive, and if used improperly, can totally kill you. However, right, it all depends. I mean, you may have heard of the radium girls. They put this stuff on their skin, like super close, just wore it so they could glow. They thought it was cool looking. So a lot of them died. But that was an improper use. Just like fire is a wonderful, beautiful tool, but you don't want it to be too close, right? There's ways to use these things so that they can benefit you instead of killing you. So, for example, radium, right? If you have it a certain length away, there's different particles that shoot out from it, right? The particles that are close are harmful. The particles that are further away are actually helpful if you study it. Okay, don't take my word for it. Please go look that up. Anyways, all right. So the energon, aka radium, right, has now been properly radiated, basically, is what happens. That blue beam, all that ionization shoots out from the earth and all these different cavernous systems and stuff. And that's why those fallen angels, they come down and they mine for this substance, right? Because it helps to keep them alive in a world that is now they're stuck in, and is going to cause them to die and start to age and stuff as the pressure starts to build once more. So they'll start mining for that and stuff. So the Bumblebee is on this rock that all of a sudden is charged with, we'll call it radium, and it brings him to life. His eyes turn blue. He gets his spirit back. All his cells are rejuvenated if he has cells. And LL Cool J comes on his radio and he says, I have come here to kick ass. And he doesn't say chew bubblegum, but I thought that was cool that they had him quote Rowdy Roddy Piper from They Live. And so Bumblebee's back at it. He comes back to life. Okay, this is also symbolic of what happens during the plasma apocalypse, okay? The dead come back to life. The Bible describes this in a chapter called the Valley of Bones. or skeletons, a man watches as bones start regrowing sinew and muscle tissue and eventually skin and stuff. And it's the resurrection described in great detail. And this is what you're seeing with bumblebees symbolically. Now, there's huge, gigantic, all these different Fantazoids start jumping. They fall from the sky, okay? This one is a huge scorpion, okay? Which is basically a lobster. So, right? They start fighting the giant scorpions and insectoids and stuff like that, and they're all fighting. This is the big battle. This is the great battle. This is the great war. This is a version of the Titanomachy and stuff. Now, this is Unicron, and you can see his sinking his little teeth into the electromagnetic dome of the world, which is probably just the sky itself. And that's figuratively plasma that is coming down into the world. And although they're showing you the world from a modern perspective, the black is just the sky above. And this is a hole in the sky that is opening up, and you can see the actual light of the heavens and the cosmos in this little pupil of that sky dome up there, right? Now, she figures out the code, which is the X and the Kaba, or the Ja-Kaba, or the Chikaba. And they're able to stop the apocalypse, basically. And the eye in the sky says, I can give you anything you want. Now, here's another correlation with people who are plasma possessed. I've noticed that, at least in pop culture and fiction and stuff, they hear voices, right? They're justified. They are tricked into thinking that the things that they're doing are serving a higher power or a higher purpose or whatever. But in reality, it's this thing up here saying, like, you know, do my will, do my bidding, or whatever. Now, they put in the code, they blow up the tower, they blow up Mount Meru, the beam retracts and stuff. But because this happens, when that beam retracts or when it appears, you will have depressurization. When the depressurization happens, you will have increased buoyancy and everything floats. So Optimus Prime starts floating up into the sky along with all these rocks from like the nothing that appears, which is the same thing. The nothing appears, starts sucking up all the rocks and stuff. They're trying to help him, trying to keep him from getting sucked up into the sky, which gives us the black hole sun symbolism, right? All this stuff is getting sucked up directly up into that dome in the sky, or that black hole, inverted dome, eyeball in the sky, whatever you want to call it. And it's all up there exactly like in Soundgarden's video, Black Hole Sun. This is exactly the same thing because some people know about this. I happen to pick up on it, right? I don't need anybody to tell me about it. We can tune into the song of the world. You can tune into the Akashic records. You can tune into ancient history and prophecy in the future, and you can see these things. This is a better depiction of it because here in Black Hole Sun, they actually depict it as an inverted dome, or the eye in the sky with the depressurization point blowing it outward, basically, and everything getting sucked up. Right? Even put a little person getting sucked up into it there. Now, at the end, they all gather together for victory. This is going to establish their first holiday. Whatever they establish after these would be our ancestors, symbolically. They would establish a holiday. They would mark this time. They would mark this day. And they would make sure that, you know, their descendants were indoors so they couldn't get sucked up, that they lit candles so that they could have light when the lights go out and the stars disappear and the sun disappears and stuff. And they say, is he gone? And he says he's trapped, but not dead. He's trapped back out beyond the dome because the electromagnetic barrier went back up, cutting off whatever's inside is now inside. Okay, all that red plasma, all those Fantazoids and stuff, they're in here. We're going to live together. If you decide to stay here, or if you just happen to stay here and you get, you know, you survive, but you stay. Some people want to leave. That's fine too. Like, there's ways you could do that. Okay. But if you stay here, you're trapped in here with all that red plasma that is now in here. But the good news is you're trapped in here during what's going to be a golden age with all of those blue beams and ionized oxygen filling our world, causing gigantism, restoring your cellular structure, extending lifespans and stuff like that. You'll be able to talk to the animals. So you'll notice that these are talking animals throughout the whole movie, symbolically, right? That's because we once all had a common language, which was an energetic language, which is telepathy, right? And it's going to start coming back here pretty soon, right before the end. You'll see that people will be able to talk to their animals. They'll understand their animals. The animals talk to people, etc., right? And they all gather together at Mount Meru, and they say he could return. So that sleeping god up there, in the form of like Cthulhu or the purple people eater or the spaghetti monster or Medusa or Chronos or whatever, will return. Okay, it's just up there. It's biding its time. It's just kept out by a protective shield or a protective barrier. And he says, but together we might just have a chance. So working together is going to be crucial to surviving the apocalypse, right? And not just surviving the apocalypse, but preventing it from even coming in the first place. So if you listen to my channel, quite often I've dropped many clues as to how to prevent the apocalypse, how to keep it from happening. And if you study comparative mythology and you look into what the ancients did to appease their gods, you will also figure out how to keep the apocalypse from returning. Anyways, they look on the TV and it says mysterious storm covers the Western Hemisphere, right? So that's the world storm that will erupt and cause a huge worldwide storm. Now, Noah goes back to work. He's trying to find a job, and they interview him and he says, well, actually, we're interviewing you for a special position. We are a secret government organization. We specialize in global threats, planetary loss prevention, that kind of thing. And his mind is blown, right? The reason that they're recruiting him is because he knows about all these secrets. He's privy to it, right? So instead of taking him out, instead of saying, oh, you know too much or whatever, there's agencies out there that don't want that. You could be, instead of a liability, you could be a useful part of their organization. You know what I mean? So they look for people like that and they go recruit them and they say, hey, since you know so much, since you've been in the fight, since you have some experience, why don't you come work for us? We'd love you. We'd love to have you join the fight. And then his walls open up and there's this huge like military installation inside of his office on the other side of the wall. He gives him a business card and on the back it says G.I. Joe. So there's going to be a cross, right? There's going to be a cross between all these different Hasbro toys, and you'll see all these worlds are colliding. Okay, in all the movies and all these multiverses and stuff, the DC universe is no different and is not separate from the Marvel universe. If they are multiverses, they all exist in the same verse. I don't know what to call it. The quintiverse, the quintessential verse. I don't know, but you know what I mean? All of them, every single Pixar verse, Disney verse, all of them exist because they're all showing us and reflecting back to us truths and elements of our own history and our own future. And that is our breakdown. That's our story. I hope you guys had a good time in the chat. Please leave me some awesome comments. Until next time, I'm JayDreamerZ saying good vibes and goodbye.
Decode.